Thank you, Broadcasting. I now welcome Senator the Honourable Tim Ayres, Minister for Industry and Innovation and Minister for Science, representing Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Minister, there is an opportunity to make an opening statement, but I have given the same instruction to everyone all day, which is if it can be dispensed with, wonderful, and if it can't be, as brief as possible, please.
I don't want to disappoint everybody here, but I do not have an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now call officers from the Department in relation to Outcome 1, support the transition of Australia's economy to net zero emissions by 2050, transition energy to support net zero while maintaining security, reliability and affordability, support actions to promote adaptation, strength and resilience of the Australian economy, society and environment, and take a leadership role internationally in respect to climate change. And we are now going to program item 1.1, reduce Australia's greenhouse gas emissions, and I will go first to the Coalition and Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you. I just had, and this might be the wrong place, and I wanted to understand the government's mechanism for tracking the origin of refined oil products arriving at Australian ports, and I did ask Department of Infrastructure, Transport, and they said DQ. So I just...
It's actually an outcome 1.2. Is it? 1.2, which is up next after climate.
Great, so I haven't missed it.
You've not missed it.
Righto, so sharpen your pencils, people. We'll get some questions on that. 1.2. Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Napier-Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I've just got a couple of general questions. So, Minister Chris Bowen said the total taxpayer investment to achieve the new 2035 target was now $75 billion. Can the department please provide the breakdown as to what has been spent so far, what is to be spent per year, and what remains in separate funds?
So, Senator, I think that is a whole of government figure estimated through to 2035, I think. It's certainly not all expenditure in this department.
So that's not able to be provided at this point? Can it be provided on...
You may be able to get it.
Yeah, let me just double check, but I think we'll have to just take that on notice.
Notice?
Yeah. So could you just repeat the question though? So 75 billion, what has been spent?
What has been spent so far?
Yep.
What is to be spent per year, and what remains in separate funds?
Okay. Yeah.
Can the department at all advise what is the actual cost to government per year for climate-related incentives?
Can you elaborate, perhaps, Senator, on what you mean by climate-related incentives?
Well, I suppose subsidies, anything that incentivises a steer toward reducing emissions, I suppose.
Yeah, so Senator, I'll just have Mr Mundy join us, but in Budget Paper 1, Statement 3, which is the fiscal strategy and outlook, it does report on what that spending is. So you're right, the government has committed over $70 billion to action on climate change, and so that funding is the estimate put together by the Treasury, and so it's not just what's in this department or the initiatives that we're responsible for, but across government.
So that the cost then would relating to, I suppose, incentives, climate incentives, is captured in that $75 billion as a whole, is it?
That's correct. And again, in terms of what was reported under Program 1.1 for DQ's portfolio budget statement in 2025-26, there was $499 million in administered funds allocated in the 2025-26 budget to fund initiatives under program 1.1.
Sorry, can you repeat that figure again?
So 499 million which were allocated in 2025-26 budget.
Okay. I now want to go to a paper published on renewable energy by the Centre for Independent Studies, an analysis paper 89 from September 2025. Is the department familiar at all with this paper?
If it's on the topic of renewable energy, Senator, that's you're more likely to get an answer in program 1.2, which is next up.
So it relates...
This is reducing Australia's greenhouse gas emissions, which for the purposes of the department are around the climate change group within the department. Questions on renewable energy are best left till the next outcome.
Costs of?
Sorry?
The costs of?
Costs of renewable energy?
Correct.
Yeah, well, renewable energy will be covered in the next item.
In the next item. Well, I suppose I should put those questions to that then, Chair.
Conclude your question, Senator Nampijima-Price, on this outcome for now.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Terrific, thank you. I refer to the government's Net Zero Plan, Electricity and Energy Sector Plan 2025 released by the department. Did the department or any of its reporting agencies fund in whole or in part any form of market research, polling, community attitude studies, etc., relating to the final report?
Not to my knowledge, but I'll defer to the Deputy.
In relation to the net zero plan, no, we didn't fund any of those activities.
Right, so all of the language was developed by the department and it wasn't, you know, focus group checked or taken out to the marketplace to get
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
some feel on that. No outside marketing or advertising advice. No,
Not that I'm aware of.
no graphic
Thanks for the
design.
compliment, though, that you think that we did.
Hey, well,
Thanks for the compliment.
I know. This is going well, isn't it?
Yeah, we had in-house designers.
Well, congratulations. I think then my next questions are going to be 1.2 as well.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mine goes...
Sorry, Senator McKenzie.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I have questions for 1.1 around the transport and infrastructure net zero roadmap and action plan. I'm wanting to understand the modelling that was done, having spent the day on this in the other department. But I want to understand the modelling that was done around the light vehicles pathway on page 8 in particular, where we say from 2035 to 2050, fossil fuels will only be used in very specific circumstances. So to me, that says by 2035, we anticipate, the government anticipates, that the majority of light vehicles in the fleet will be electric vehicles. And I want to understand the numbers underneath that graphic on page 8, I think it is.
So, Senator, if you're referring to the sector plans
Yes.
that were released along with the net zero plan, they are the responsibility of line agencies.
No, I understand that, but you developed the 2035 targets
Net
and
zero
the
plan.
2030 based on what role do the sectoral plans have in you setting your targets?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Kath Rowley, Head of the Emissions Reduction Division. So a couple of things I can speak to, but the details of the modelling may need to be referred to my colleagues in Treasury.
Oh, no,
So
to Treasury.
That Treasury conducted the modelling to inform the net zero plan. In addition, the 2035 target, which you referred to, was informed by advice and analysis by the Climate Change Authority, who are appearing separately before this committee and could speak to the analysis that they did. But to your question about the kind of the outlook for different fuels, including the use of fossil fuels across the economy, the modelling that Treasury conducted, and which is presented in the net zero and the sector plans, looked at the cost-effective opportunities to reduce emissions across the Australian economy based on the best available information and in the context of global action to keep warming well below 2 degrees. And so we used, the Treasury drew together, based on consultation across government, the kind of outlook for technologies and fuels and global supply and demand of commodities, and synthesise that through a suite of models, which is presented in their published report, to look at where are the cost-effective opportunities over time from now to 2050. And so what you'll see in their results is that there is substantial cost-effective abatement potential in particularly the light vehicle segment of the transport sector in the nearer term, and that over the longer term we see opportunities like low carbon liquid fuels and perhaps in some transport applications hydrogen and other fuels coming in.
I appreciate that, but those assumptions are based on the unaffordability of petrol and diesel cars over the next 10 years as a result of the NVES.
No, Senator, that's not correct. What I said was that it looked at the emissions reduction potential across the economy, and it identified the cost-effective opportunities across all sectors over time, and it found that particularly in that initial period within the transport sector, as you've pointed out, as presented in the sector plan, that there are significant cost-effective opportunities to electrify in the light vehicle fleet, and we see significant take-up over that period.
Well, that's what you're anticipating to see. That's actually not what industry says is possible.
So I think, Senator, different participants in industry have different views about the outlook. There's a pretty big technology transformation going on in the transport sector, and so it's true to say that different market participants have different views about how that will play out.
Well, some have a greater conflict of interest in those views than others, but the actual industry body that represents both the producers and marketers of electric vehicles, hybrids, and also represents those who are seeking to develop hydrogen technologies and indeed efficient petrol and diesel engines. So the industry body that represents all those sectors, isn't just focused on one, has said on the maths it's actually impossible to sell in excess of 6 million new electrical vehicles by 2035, which is actually what this plan requires to be done if the target is to be met. That is the data from the association that represents both the electric vehicles, because car dealers are car dealers. They just want to sell cars, and if they're selling electric vehicles, that's fine. If they're selling petrol and diesel, that's fine. Car dealers want to sell cars, irrespective of the technology, as you would understand. But the maths from industry, and it has been widely reported, actually said it was impossible. So I want to understand whether you'd spoken to not just select groups within the car industry, but the actual practical reality, because they don't care about what they sell, but they're saying it will be impossible to sell the number of cars that you need sold to reach the target.
So
Do you have a response to that?
I might speak briefly to the question of what's required to meet the target, and then my colleague might want to speak a bit more about what who we're engaging with and what we're hearing on the market outlook side. But Senator, with respect to what's required to meet Australia's 2035 target, The Treasury modelling, alongside the CCA advice and substantial other analysis that has informed the government's decision, identifies extensive emissions reduction potential across the Australian economy. And the government has a suite of policies and measures in place to drive emissions reductions. And as it sets out in the Net Zero plan, that suite of policies will be augmented and refined over time in light of the experience. In the context of the transport sector, one of those key policies is the New Vehicle Efficiency Standard, the NVES, which you referred to earlier. The CCA analysis and the Treasury modelling identifies, or the Treasury modelling in particular identifies, based on what we know, what the most cost-effective opportunities are, but it's not a prescriptive pathway. It's not saying this must happen by this time in this place. It's based on what we know now, where the cost-effective opportunities are, and the fact is, for a national economy-wide target, we haven't set a target for the sectors, and the government hasn't set a target for electric vehicle uptake.
No.
But for the national economy-wide target, if you do a bit less in some areas, then you need to do a bit more in other areas. It's not correct to say that a particular thing must be done so as to achieve the national target. There's a suite of options to choose from.
Okay, and now over time you'll be able to move different leaders. And I've just got... Yep, this is my last question in this area. Last time I was here, we spoke about the framework that was being set up to deal with electric cars being able to be attended to by emergency service providers, whether it's the fireys or the SES or police, because we didn't have a set of standards about when an incident happened. Given you'll say ambitious, I'll say aggressive, uptake of electric vehicles to be expected across the Australian fleet, how advanced now are those agreed standards with state governments? Because it's having insurance implications for both dealers and also purchasers.
Thank you, Senator. Matthew Ryan, Land and Transport Branch, Emissions Reduction Division. To answer your question, there was a program that was committed to as part of the NEVS, the National Electric Vehicle Strategy, which was to roll out training to first responders for the number of different incidences that might occur with an EV or a plug-in hybrid. That training has been launched and it is available. It's done through AFAC, Australian Fire Association's, the peak body for firefighters. They've been rolling out that training since July. To date, I think there has been about 2,000 completions of that training that's been done. There's been a further, I think, around 8,000 enrolments. The reason the difference between the enrolments and the completions is it takes quite a while to work through the program. There's a number of modules. It deals with things like EVs that might be parked in a garage, EVs that might be in an accident, EVs that might be submerged by a flood, so the different situations that might occur and how to deal with them. So it takes quite a while to work through it. So there's been that rolled out and that's underway at the moment in terms of providing that training to fireys. Might also be volunteers in rural fire brigades and other first responders as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Waters.
Evening, Minister. Start with the climate targets, please. Obviously, we're on record saying we don't think they're science-based, or we don't think that 62 is anywhere near what's needed to keep us to 1.5 or even 2 degrees of warming. But notwithstanding that, Climate Council says that 75% would get us to 2.3 to 2.4 degrees. And they also say that only net zero by 2035 would give us a reasonable chance of staying under 2 degrees. The Minister contended that 62 was aligned with Paris, but there's no analysis, or I can't see anything to legitimise that statement. What assertion, what basis is that assertion, or on what has the Minister based that assertion?
Thank you, Senator. So the Climate Change Authority provided its independent expert advice to the government on the matter of the 2035 target. They've produced a very substantial report that presents their analysis and advice based on extensive public consultation and engagement with experts and stakeholders across the Australian economy. Their recommendation to the government, provided on the 12th of September this year, was for a target of 62 to 70% below 2005 levels by 2035. That was their advice, and as part of their advice, they presented their analysis both of all of the relevant considerations set out under their statute and the Climate Change Act, including consideration of the Paris Agreement and the global temperature goals. That report is published and available for you to look at. We also presented a kind of a summary of the key considerations in the target on the the chapter on the 2035 target in the Net Zero plan.
Okay, so you're just saying that because it's in the CCA doc that's why Minister Bowen is asserting that 62 will keep us aligned with Paris. There's no other document that he's...
So Senator,
I was just going to add, just to add to Ms Rowley's answer. So the Climate Change Authority, of course, considered the science, and I think, as you know, includes our chief scientists and also Dr. Leslie Hughes, one of the leading IPCC authors. So it did consider that. The IPCC has found in its most recent report that global emissions must reduce by 60% from 2019 levels to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. And while that does not determine what the national contribution should be, it does provide a useful point of comparison. So when you look at, instead of 2019 levels, 2005 levels, that's a 68% reduction on 2005 levels. So given that Australia's target range is 62 to 70%, 68 falls within that range, and that is a point of data evidence that supports Minister Bowen's statement.
Okay, did the department provide any specific advice about Paris alignment?
Senator, the department, alongside the Climate Change Authority's advice to the government, addressed all of the relevant considerations to the target, and that's reflected in the Net Zero plan, which was published on the 18th of September.
Okay, but did you specifically advise on what likely temperature outcome 62 would lead to, and whether that was aligned with Paris?
Senator, you would appreciate that the global temperature outcome is a function of global emissions, and so there is no singular or linear relationship between Australia's target and global temperature outcomes. Of course, Australia makes its full contribution to global efforts to reduce emissions in line with the Paris temperature goals. And the target of 62 to 70% was identified by the Climate Change Authority, having taken into account all of the considerations, including the Paris temperature goals, as Australia's highest possible ambition, and the government accepted that advice.
So have you provided advice to the Minister on the Climate Council's analysis that says that only net zero by 2035 will keep us below 2 degrees, and explain the discrepancy between those two positions?
Senator, in its public consultation on Australia's target, the Climate Change Authority engaged with a wide range of stakeholders. Similarly, when we were putting together the Net Zero plan, when we were putting together the Net Zero plan, we took into account the views that had been expressed right across the stakeholder group, and the Climate Council, along with some other stakeholders, were advocating for net zero by 2035. There were other stakeholders advocating for different views, and so ultimately the assessment comes back to what is an appropriate target for Australia, including what's Australia's appropriate contribution to global action to reduce emissions and with the ultimate goal of keeping warming well below 2 degrees and to keep 1.5 degrees within reach.
Thank you. I understand all that. My question was, did you brief the Minister on the Climate Council's analysis that only a target of net zero by 2035 would keep us below 2 degrees, according to their analysis? Did you brief them? You don't have to agree with that analysis. Did you brief the Minister on that analysis?
We provided advice to the government on the range of stakeholder views, including stakeholders who were calling for targets of 100% reductions by 2035.
Okay, you're still not specifically answering my question, though, and I'm going to have to ask again, or you could just answer, which would be nice.
So
did you advise on that particular analysis?
I'd need to take it on notice, Senator.
Okay,
I can't speak for certain.
Coming back to the sector plans which you've mentioned, I have looked at those. They don't set out clear policies or actions to achieve the overall 62% target, but the CCA did identify 7 policies that they say must be adopted to reach the targets, and they are clearly identified as the bare minimum in CCA's mind to reach 62. Has the government agreed to those policies or briefed the department to enact them?
Senator, the government's policies are as set out in the net zero plan and the sector plans. The net zero plan makes clear that we have a number of policy reviews in place or scheduled, which will provide an opportunity to review the performance of those policies and consider the contribution they will make towards meeting the 2035 target. It also set out the process of reviewing and augmenting policy over time, and so that's the approach that the government's taking. That will be informed by the Climate Change Authority's annual progress reports, and there's the accountability mechanisms of the annual projections and inventory, as well as the Minister's annual statement to Parliament.
Thanks for all of that, but my question was not that. My question was whether or not the CCA's 7 key policies that it said must be adopted to reach the 62, whether the government has agreed to those. You know, the 90% renewables, the ending deforestation, the new EVs, the lifting organics recycling, those 7 I'm sure you know what they are. Has the government said yes to those or not?
Not at this time, Senator.
Have they adopted any of them?
The policies of the government are as set out in the net zero plan, and so I don't have the list in front of me, but if they're not reflected in the net zero plan, then they have not at this time been adopted.
Okay, so how can the government selectively adopt CCA advice and then choose to discount their clear calculations that say you must do these things in order to meet 62?
So, Senator, the CCA was requested by the Minister to provide advice on Australia's target, and their advice on Australia's target was that Australia's highest possible ambition was a target of 62 to 70% below 2005 levels by 2035. In providing their advice and in doing their analysis, building on the work that they did in the sector pathways review that was provided to the government last year, they've expressed views about the range of policies and measures that, in their view, will help get Australia to that 62% target. The government will, as it does with all of the Climate Change Authority's advice, consider that as part of its ongoing work program. But at this point in time, they have not accepted they haven't changed their policies or adopted those specific observations. But the core recommendation of the CCA's advice was the target of 62 to 70%, and the government has accepted that recommendation.
Okay,
Senator Waters, just 1 minute.
If you haven't accepted what CCA says was the bare minimum to reach 62, what's the plan to reach 62?
Senator, I think the problem is that you're asking is that you're Senator McKim, you're not starting very well, really. Like this committee has run well and truly over time. There are questions that your colleague wants to ask. We're endeavouring to answer them. We want to answer them carefully and in a straightforward way. And what I was setting about explaining before you're up and about, been as disruptive on this as you are
Minister,
in terms of the government's renewable strategy, opposing wind farms in Robbins Island, which is a
Can I have an answer to my question?
destructive
to the
environmental
official,
vandalism
Chair,
yourself.
they
You're
can have their chat
mischaracterising
anywhere.
how the
I
Climate
want to
Change
talk to the
Authority,
official.
Senator Waters,
Sorry,
has set out this report. They say here
Minister,
are a series of...
Minister,
Well, she's mischaracterising the Climate Change Authority's
and you're entitled to
Actually,
answer that in the
not.
question. But no, sorry, Senator Henderson, as well. I'm more than capable of handling this. Thank you. Appreciate your help. Please direct it to the questions, Minister, and keep your answer within that.
Yeah, and if I'm
Thank
not interrupted, I'll do my best. You're mischaracterising. Interrupting again, honestly.
Oh, precious.
The Climate Change Authority, and the chair will be here later to answer questions about this, has set out a series of streams of activity that, if adopted, would collectively get you into the 62 to 70 range. That is, as I think one of the officials was saying before, they are not the only ways of acting.
Well, I've just asked what are the ways of
if there is less achieved in one area, it means more needs to be achieved in another. 62 to 70 is a very substantial task for the country and the economy. And it does require not just the federal government acting, but of course the states and territories and everybody else who's engaged in this task. That's why there's a range. The vectors of activity, whatever we're calling them, are not government policy, but that is what the Climate Change Authority has set out. And you shouldn't characterise it in the way that you did. It's very difficult for the official to answer questions if you do it that way.
Well, it's very difficult if no one gives her the chance to respond. So, Ms Rowley, my question was, if the government hasn't accepted the 7 key policies that underpin CCA's calculation to get to 62, how does the government propose to get to 62?
So, Senator, if you've spent some time looking at the net zero plan, you'll see that it sets out the government's approach to reducing emissions to 2030, 2035 and beyond.
It was very vague.
It sets
sorry,
out,
but
if I could finish, the government sets out policies and measures organised around 5 decarbonisation priorities. They are expanding clean electricity across the economy, and under that banner there's a number of policies and measures that have been articulated, including the 82% renewable target supported by the capacity investment scheme, rewiring the nation and other measures which could be explored in further detail in outcome 1.2. It also foreshadows reviews that are currently on foot that are going to inform further policy reform over time. The second is to lower emissions through electrification and energy efficiency. It sets out the suite of policies and measures, again, that the government has implemented to drive electrification across the economy, backed by that expanded renewable energy generation, and to improve energy efficiency. Alongside the plan, there were a number of energy efficiency measures that were funded and announced as alongside release of the plan, which again could be explored in outcome 1.2 if you're interested. The third principle is, or the third priority is to expand clean fuel use, which is particularly important in those applications that cannot be electrified. Again, there are a suite of policies and measures set out in the plan that the government is already implementing to do that. And alongside announcement of the plan, the government announced a commitment of $1.1 billion to support the development and production of low-carbon liquid fuels in Australia to support accelerated decarbonisation options for those activities that cannot be electrified. The fourth priority is to accelerate new technologies, and this is an innovation measure. And the government, again, in the net zero plan, sets out the policies and measures that it has implemented over the course of the last 3 years to drive innovation. Senator, you asked what the government's plan was, and I'm just stepping you through the top priorities as identified in the plan. Alongside those existing policies and measures, again, it foreshadows the further action to be taken over time. And finally, the fifth priority is to scale up net carbon removals, and again sets out the policies and measures the government has put in place to enhance carbon removal in the Australian landscape, and the further policies and measures to be implemented over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will have to come. I'll have to come back to you, Senator Waters. I'm now going to Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Australia has a legislated 43% emissions reduction target. from 2005 levels by 2030. Current emissions are approximately 440 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is only 28% below 2005 levels. So we're only 5 years away from 2030. Are we going to make this target? Because many experts say that we are falling well short of the 2030 target. Ms Munro.
Thank you, Senator. So your facts are correct. For the year to March 2025, Australia's emissions were 440.2 million tonnes, or 28% below the year to June 2005. The department also prepares our emissions projections, and so under that, the baseline scenario, Australia is on track to overachieve on the 2030 target on a budget basis.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you there.
Just shy on the actual time target. So if I can just finish this part though, just on the basis of our cumulative emissions over the period 2021 to 2030, we were projected to actually be 3% below the emissions budget and 42.6% below 2005 levels in 2030.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase here, Ms Munro. The average requirement per year between now and 2030 that's required is 16 million tonnes a year to reach 43% emissions reduction. What's your projection for this year? Because so far you've achieved just over 4 million tonnes lower than 2022. And so what I'm putting to you, based on the last 3 years, which has been very marginal, almost flatlining, to get to 43%, you're going to have to lower emissions by 16 million tonnes a year.
So
is that what your projections are showing?
I might actually ask
No, Ms Munro, I just want to finish this line of questioning.
Sorry. Yep.
So is that, could you please provide on notice those projections that you're reading from? Sorry, can you please provide those to us now? So could you just take us through each year what you're projecting your emissions will be per tonne for each year between now and 2030?
Yeah, well, there's a details of how we actually produce.
No, I'm not interested in how. I'm just interested in the number. How many for this year?
So,
how many million
Senator,
tonnes?
if I could just provide a brief chapeau.
No,
I don't. Sorry, I'm sorry, Senator. With respect,
I'm sorry. With respect to me, I'm asking a specific question. I don't. Minister.
The officials are trying to answer the question.
Minister, could you not interrupt me, please?
Should allow them to answer the question.
Minister, I am asking a question.
And give them an opportunity to do that. They don't have to answer it in the way that she wants them to. But she has to. That they are going to give it a go. And if they can't satisfy Senator Henderson, they're entitled to take it on notice, but they're trying to explain.
No, it's not about satisfying me.
Sorry. Before we continue this debate, let me just say this.
Point of order, Chair.
I will come to your point of order in a moment, Senator Henderson. The place that I had thought we'd got was that there was aspects of Senator Henderson's questioning that remained to be elaborated on. If that wasn't the case and there was an opportunity being given to answer, then I agree, Senator Henderson, the witnesses need to be given a chance to answer the questions. So I had understood you hadn't completed the question
I haven't
yet.
completed the question.
Okay.
So
please just show me respect by allowing me to ask the question. The question is, you've got to achieve on average 16 million tonnes per year less emissions to get to 43%. Year by year, what is your projection? And can you please provide the substantiation of that projection? I just want the yearly number per year. So what's 2025, please?
Thanks. So I'm Alana Pencheny and I'm the branch head of the National Inventory Systems and International Reporting branch. My branch produces the emissions projections. So that information is published in the projections. I just need to take on notice. We don't have a table that I've prepared with all of those numbers in it, but it is published in the emissions projections, which also include a detailed explanation of the methodologies that we used to arrive at those projections. I can tell you what the
So I just want the year, each year, and the number per year, please.
I understand. I don't have that table with me in a way that I can give it to you now. I can take it on notice, but I can also advise you that it is published in the emissions projections report, which is available online.
Could you just provide the committee with each year, please?
On notice, I can do that.
So you can't provide us with how many million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent is going to be reduced each year between now and 2030?
We can provide those figures, Senator, for the 2024 projections, which is our most recent official projections of the period out to 2040. That is a published report, and all of the data underpinning the charts in that report are available on our website. We can also provide it to you on notice.
This is Senate estimates. Could you just move your nameplate forward? I just can't see your full name. Sorry. Thank you, Ms Riley. This is Senate estimates. I'm not, with respect, we're not going to be going to any website. I'm asking between 2025 and 2030, could you please take us through each year's emissions reduction? How many million tonnes in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 and 30?
Thank you,
Senator. I think we've taken that on notice.
The official is entitled to take it on notice, but she's also pointed out to you that with a Google search you could produce those results yourself. She's entitled to. So
you're not going to answer the question, Minister? Is that the issue?
It is.
And is that because you're not going to make
respect has to go both ways here, Senator Henderson.
The Minister is disrespectful.
Senator Henderson, please come to order. The Minister is providing an answer from the table. Please hear.
She's entitled to take it on notice. She's just pointing out, as am I, that this is public, open, transparent data that is published on a regular basis by the government for people who are interested to be able to, genuinely interested, to be able to make those inquiries and read it for themselves. We will provide it on a notice because that's what we're required to do, but I'm just pointing out to you that it's there. That's there for you and your colleagues and anybody else who's interested in it.
Minister, with respect, this is Senate estimates. We are asking questions. I'm asking data. How many million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent will be reduced per year? Because I want to put to you and put to your department that this is a huge fudge. You're at 28%, and based on the fact that you've achieved just over 4 million tonnes in 3 years, there is nothing to evidence the fact that you can achieve a 16 million tonne per year reduction in emissions to get to 43% by 2030.
Well, the data, the projections are publicly available, and the officials are.
All right. Well, could you tell me what they are per year, if your officials can't, Minister?
As I've indicated, we've taken that on notice.
That's extraordinary. This is a core part of your energy plan, and are you telling me that you or no one in your department can provide this basic information? Because what I'm saying to you is, there is every bit of evidence that this is a fraud in terms of telling the Australian people that you are going to make a 43... No, excuse me, Minister, I would like to finish.
Now, this is
a fraud in telling the Australian people that you are going to reach a 43% reduction in emissions. Please don't talk over me.
Well, you've been talking over me.
No, I'm not talking over you. I'm asking a question.
The officials are endeavouring to answer your question again. I can sense an effort here to try and engage with some of the material.
Well, so far they've declined.
As they have said, publicly available.
So far they've declined to provide the data.
During the course of the discussion, we've looked it up online and we have the material for you.
Good, thank you, Mr Kaiser.
So, Senator, I've just accessed it from our website, and so from the 2024 emissions projections, our estimate of emissions in 2024 in the baseline scenario is 441 million tonnes. Projected to remain at the same level in 2025, projected to decline to 439 million tonnes, that's a 2 million tonne reduction in 2026, to 434 million tonnes in 2027, that's a 5 million tonne reduction, to 411 million tonnes in 2028, that's a 23 million tonne reduction, to 381 million tonnes in 2029, that's a 30 million tonne reduction, and to 352 million tonnes in 2030, which is a, if my maths is correct, 29 million tonne reduction.
Okay, well, if you could provide the mechanisms that you would be using to get to 352 million tonnes by 2030, because in 3 years it's only been a very, very small reduction.
Senator, I'm happy to speak to those if you're interested.
No, I've asked if you could do that on notice, please.
Oh, okay.
Provide those mechanisms. But what I do want to, and I'm conscious of time, the 82% renewables target is obviously a key policy in achieving the 43% emissions reduction target. There are various experts who have determined that the best that you might reach is 58%. Rystad Energy says you might reach 65%. What evidence do you have to suggest that you will reach 82% by 2030?
Senator, the people who can answer that question will be up next in outcome 1.2.
So you don't have anyone who can answer?
Well, we do, but it's the next outcome that we'll be speaking to. Renewable energy.
Isn't it part of your emissions reduction?
Yeah, but we've set out an agenda. The agenda is set out by outcome, and the next outcome addresses renewable energy.
All right, well, I'll leave it at that, and I will hand over to another senator. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Senator Waters.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can we pick up where we left off? You said that one of the ways that you would attempt to achieve 62, not the ways the CCA has suggested, but was to scale up net carbon removals. So can we go to that, please? The Treasury modelling for the targets shows 150 million tonnes of carbon removals by 2050. Did your department contribute to that modelling? And then how much of that removal is expected to occur from revegetation or avoided deforestation?
Thank you. Senator Waters, so just to clarify, the 62 to 70% reduction is for 2035. And the 150 million tonne figure that you quoted was for 2050. So did you want to talk about the period to 2035 or to 2050 or to both?
No, I want to talk about the period to 2050. And my first question was whether or not you had input into the Treasury modelling that says that 150 million tonnes of carbon removals by 2050 has been modelled.
Thank you, Senator. And so, yes, the department did contribute to the work led by the Treasury, along with the other sectors, sector department leads. We all contributed information analysis and advice to Treasury that then synthesised that work into their modelling. That was also done in close consultation with the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, including contributions from ABARES.
Okay, great. So how much of that 150 million tonnes of carbon removal is expected to come from revegetation or avoided deforestation?
The detail, some degree of detail is set out in the Treasury modelling report, and perhaps for the specifics you might want to refer to them, but I can certainly say that within the Treasury modelling, all of the carbon removals that were modelled and presented in that figure were land-based removals, and so that Treasury did not find through its analysis that other forms of carbon removal would be cost-effective within that time frame.
Okay, so basically all of it is the answer. So what is the government doing to achieve the volume of reforestation needed to meet those targets?
Senator, so the target is net zero. The government doesn't have a specific target for the land sector or for land sector removals. As I explained earlier, the Treasury modelling is an illustrative scenario of the cost-effective opportunities available across the Australian economy based on the information we have available now. And so and our understanding of the emissions reduction opportunities obviously improves over time as technology and global markets evolve. But in terms of the key policies and measures the government has to support land-based sequestration, they're set out in some detail in the Land and Agriculture Plan, but some of the key ones are work to expand and support expansion of the plantation estate, There's work to improve the conservation estate. Major programs like the Natural Heritage Trust support better land management over time across public and private, particularly private tenures, and policies and measures like the Australian Carbon Credit Unit scheme, which provides a specific incentive or reward for carbon sequestration from eligible projects under approved methods.
Okay, so how many ACCUs have been produced from that reforestation method to date?
Sorry?
How many ACCUs have been produced from that reforestation method to date?
Which reforestation method
One you
are
just
you?
described.
So there's a number of vegetation-related methods under the ACCU scheme, and my colleague might be able to assist with details, but the Clean Energy Regulator administers the ACCU scheme and probably has the best information on ACCUs issued under specific methods
Okay, well, I might
today.
with respect, I might take it up with them a bit later, and I'm sure my colleague will as well, because my understanding is the answer is 0. But I have other questions for you, and I'll take that up with them. So
Senator Waters, I'm going to move the call in a minute.
Please, can I just get one more question out?
Yeah, you have another
Chair.
minute, Senator
Thank
Waters.
You. So you've just described the Treasury modelling that your department contributed to in concert with a bunch of others that you listed as an illustrative model. So you're saying that actually it is not government policy to remove 150 million tonnes of carbon by 2050. It's just illustrative modelling. I want to make sure I've got that right.
Senator, the government's the government doesn't have a target for carbon removals in 2050. It has a target of net zero emissions across the Australian economy by 2050. The precise source of the emissions reductions and removals to balance residual emissions will evolve over time in light of both the policies and measures the government has in place, the actions by state and territory governments, and the evolution of technology and global markets. And so based on the analysis that the Treasury has done with all of the inputs and assumptions presented in their published report, our current estimate under the baseline scenario was in the order of 150 million tonnes of residual emissions in 2050, which would be balanced by 150 million tonnes of carbon removals from, as we discussed, the land sector. But it is not a forecast. It's not a projection in the classic sense of here is what we think will happen over those sorts of time frames. It is an illustrative scenario based on the stated assumptions.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Waters. I'm going to go to Senator Whitten.
Is the department aware of the Page Research Centre submission to the Select Committee on Information Integrity on Climate Change and Energy that has highlighted over $108 million in pro-renewable foreign funding over the past 10 years?
So, Senator, I personally am not aware of that Page report, but it does relate to renewable energy investment, which again is under outcome 1.2.
So colleagues who are coming to the table for the next item may have heard of the report. Okay. Is there anything being done to investigate foreign funding to activist groups targeting coal, gas and nuclear?
Senator, I'm not aware of the basis of those claims and not aware of any policies addressing those issues.
Will you take it on notice?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, we can take it on notice.
It's in the report, so if you...
Is this the Page report?
What was the organisation again, sorry? The Page Research Centre. It was a submission to the Select Committee.
We'll check the claim. I certainly haven't heard of them, Senator, but we'll do our best.
What are the current disclosure rules for internationally funded activist groups and how are they enforced?
I don't believe that's a matter that this department administers, if anyone does. Okay. The Institute of Public Affairs has reported that 35 of the 50 largest wind farms and 36 of the 50 largest solar projects are partially or completely foreign owned. Has the department provided any advice to government or released any reports on potential foreign influence in relation to the energy transition?
So again, Senator, at the moment we're dealing with outcome 1.1, which is broadly about climate change, and the next outcome 1.2 is about renewable energy projects. Obviously they're related. One hopefully leads to good outcomes in the other, but
we didn't know which one we're going to fit into, so yep.
We're trying just to manage the movement of officers from the front table to the back seat, so they'll be with you soon.
Okay.
Although, you know, foreign investment matters should probably be directed to Treasury.
The rest of my questioning is on that, so I might leave it at that if you like.
To you in outcome 1.2, if that's okay then. Senator Whitten. I'm going to move to Senator Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to officials. Has the government claimed that it is on track to deliver the 2030 emissions target?
So, Senator, as I answered before, the department produces...
sorry, Ms Munro, again, you're
sorry.
just have to...
Sorry, as I was stating before, Senator, the department does produce the projections, and so the latest projections on whether the government is on track or not on track was produced at the end of last year, and on that basis, yes, on a carbon budget basis, it's 3% below and just shy on a point target at 42.6%.
And what are the assumptions that underpin that level of confidence?
Senator, those figures come from the emissions projections report, and that report sets out in some detail how we work through the various assumptions and projected policies, the impacts of projected policies into the future. So it's quite a lengthy report. I don't think I can summarise all of it in a short answer.
So do all of the assumptions in the report have to be realised for the government to have confidence that its 2030 emissions target will be met?
The projections attempt to project forward the impact of current government policies and with additional measures scenario of policies where there's less information currently available on emissions out to 2040. So it's not that that's what's required to meet a particular target. The projections are our best estimate at the time that we prepare them of what the emissions are likely to be.
And Senator, I might just add a couple of things. So the emissions projections look at the current outlook for markets, for global markets and demand for Australia's commodity exports, looks at current availability of technologies and the kind of current outlook for those technologies, and it makes assumptions about the Commonwealth, state and territory key policies and measures that have been sufficiently progressed that we can model them with confidence, and all of those things bear upon our estimates of emissions. One of the key assumptions is full implementation of current government policies as articulated in that projections document, and some of the key measures that are important, particularly for the outlook to 2030, are the 82% renewable target, the new vehicle efficiency standard, and the safeguard mechanism. And details of each of those measures and their implications for emissions are presented in that published report.
So how does it seek to stay abreast of or contemplate future changes in conditions? So changes in investment appetite, for example, changes in construction timetables or construction delays, changes to sort of consumer behaviour, to consumer-driven initiatives?
Yeah, so Senator, we update the emissions projections each year, and each year we use the best information that we have at that point in time to do our best assessment of the forward outlook. So it's not we don't have an error margin in the projections. We just continue to update them over time as new information becomes available.
It's hard to predict, some of the developments on the upside as well as the downside, Senator. So, the falling cost for solar and the very high take-up by Australian households of solar, the very steep falls in solar, very steep reductions in battery prices supplemented by the scheme that the government's announced where 1,000 families are taking up batteries every day. They do, those kind of changes do have a material impact.
So when the government says it's on track, that statement is only true insofar as each of the government policies that are articulated in the document are perfectly implemented on time.
So, Senator, the projections assume that policies are implemented as intended, and the government's statement of being on track is a reflection of the most recent projections outcomes.
So when the government says it's on track, what the government is saying is that it expects its policies that are contained in the document to be met in full and according to the schedule. Yes, that's what you've just...
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. So if I've heard it incorrectly, please.
Senator, it's correct to say that the projections reflect full implementation of the government's policies, and so effectively what they're saying is we have given effect to, through legislation and through budget allocations and the funding to implement measures, that we have policies and measures in place which, if fully implemented, are sufficient to get us to that target.
And if I can just add, though, with the annual review in terms of how things are actually tracking as well, Senator. So it's not a set and forget projection, we're on track or we're not. Those policies and the underpinning methodologies are looked at every year.
So the further we move away from the existing document and the closer we get to the new document or the annual review mechanism, the less reliable the existing document is.
I mean, we update the document every year. I think it's fair to say that historically emissions projections have tended to reduce over time rather than to increase over time. So it is like the further out you are from a target, the more from a time period, the more difficult it is to have to predict what the settings are likely to be at that time. Over time, governments bring in new policies. Policies are implemented faster in some cases than we thought. Things like renewable energy came online much faster than we ever thought it was going to. And so, broadly speaking, the emissions projections have tended to track down year on year rather than track up.
So on notice, can you just demonstrate that statement to me?
Sure.
Yep, thank you. So the Minister himself has said that meeting the 82% renewable target is a very big factor in achieving the 43% emissions reduction. That's true?
Yes.
So then how do we compare that to statements such as that from Wood Mackenzie that has said that the government might reach 58%, that Rystad Energy has said that the government might reach 65% in a best scenario? How does the department sort of reconcile those statements with its level of confidence that the plan will be delivered on? The CEO of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry has said that it's doubtful it'll ever be achieved. And I think the Clean Energy Council may have said in its investment report that commitments to new projects are running at just a third of the run rate required for Australia to deliver on the target. So have you tested or interrogated each of those four statements?
Senator, I think that the thing that I would note is that the Minister is also on the record as saying that to get to 82% it's going to take hard work. It's not a simple or easy target to meet, but the government has been consistently implementing and augmenting the policies and measures and actions.
When I heard that, Ms. Rowley,
to,
I thought that was lowering expectations.
no, it's
all that
what I would.
cynicism in one so young. That's the
Sorry, Senator Ayres.
all this cynicism in one so young, Senator Smith.
I'm not cynical. You know that, Senator Ayres. I'm very much optimistic. But
that the government has continued to implement policies and measures and take actions to reduce the barriers to deployment of clean energy. And as we've referred to in previous questions, further detail on those policies and measures could be provided in outcome 1.2.
So in the current plan, none of the government's policies are terminating measures?
There's a range of policies and measures, Senator, so depending upon which ones... depends on which ones you're talking about, Senator.
No, that's my question to you.
Oh.
Yeah, are any of them terminating?
With respect to
which ones are terminating? Because I recall reading in the incoming government brief, not wanting to rehash this morning's evidence, volume 2, that there might have been, it was redacted, a list of measures, a list of terminating measures. Now, I might have misunderstood that, but my question to you, and perhaps you might take it on notice, does the plan include any terminating measures? And if so, what are those terminating measures?
And could I just clarify, because there's quite a few plans bouncing around, which plan you are specifically referring to there?
Each plan.
Each plan. Sorry,
so the current plan. The current plan.
Sorry.
The net zero plan.
Sorry, so are you talking about the net zero plan, or are you talking about what the government's doing to achieve 82%?
Let's do both.
Yeah. Certainly,
On
Senator.
notice, thank you very much.
The officials will do their best, Senator Smith, I think.
Senator Smith, I'll just give you a 1 minute warning at this point.
Might take me a minute to regroup.
Okay.
I might go to a colleague if I may.
No,
or share the call.
we'll pass the call and we'll come back to the coalition. Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Waters.
Folks, can I ask now about the funding for the $5 billion net zero fund within the National Reconstruction Fund? Is it correct that in the first 2 years the NRF has only spent $635 million of its $15 billion allocation?
I'd be absolutely delighted to answer those questions on, I think, Friday, Senator Waters, if my recollection's correct, when the National Reconstruction Fund that I have some responsibility for appears, and we can take you through that in a more systematic kind of way.
Okay, so what will the net zero fund do that can't be done with the $14 billion odd that hasn't been spent so far?
Well,
what's the difference?
As I've indicated, we'll take you through that in some detail. We've got plenty to contribute on that question. That is $5 billion for Australian industry to support electrification of industrial processes and secure investment in future manufacturing factories. Senator Waters, big factories full of blue-collar workers in our outer suburbs and industrial regions that will receive equity funding, loans and other support so that in a practical way they can secure investment in new plant and equipment. It's a very ambitious pro-manufacturing position from a pro-manufacturing government. But in terms of the details, can't wait to deal with it on Friday. 2 more sleeps.
Okay, so is the net zero fund new money, or is it just a re-announcement of money to make it look like doing something?
Well, no, it is an allocation of the $15 billion to this purpose, and I'll be very happy to go into more detail on Friday. But we are out talking to heavy industry and Australian manufacturing now about the design and the changes that will be required to make that effective for blue-collar jobs in engineering and factories in the outer suburbs and industrial regions of Australia. This is really important work to achieve good industrial outcomes It does, of course, require more electricity, which is why your colleague Senator McKim should get out of the way of wind farm development in places like Robbins Island and stop being destructive to us achieving our objectives here of securing more electricity for Australian industry. But, you know, we're determined to get on with the job.
So, sorry, is it new money? You described it as an allocation of the $15 billion, which is the NRF
That's exactly
amount.
right, yep.
So it's not new money, you're just repurposing?
It is money that is being directed towards that precise purpose. That is
so you're earmarking
achieving
5 of the 15?
That's
I'm just
exactly
trying to
right.
understand. So
Yeah,
earmarking
yeah.
5 of the 15. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there's more work to do, which in terms of the design that we're out to heavy industry are working on now. We announced that a couple of weeks ago after the PM and Minister Bowen announced the fund. We'll be setting about that work quickly, and we're very keen to spend time talking about it on Friday.
Yeah, only 2 sleeps to go. I heard you, Minister. Thank you.
Just trying to work out.
So speaking of unspent money, can I just check whether the Powering the Regions Fund Safeguard Transformation Stream, is it right that $350 million of that original $400 million hasn't been spent? And if not, why can't you use that to do something good like electrify low heat gas use in manufacturing?
Thanks, Senator. Edwina Johnson, Acting Division Head, Net Zero Industries Division. So it's right, Senator, that $600 million was allocated to the Safeguard Transformation Stream. $600 million originally, that's right. So $300 million has been allocated under Round 1 in grant funding to 15 projects. Round 2, we expect will open early in 2026. So as you're aware, Senator, the safeguard mechanism reforms are going well, and so there's been 15 projects that have been awarded funding to date. We fully anticipate that once that Round 2 of that fund opens, we will get high quality projects. As you might remember, the intention of that fund was to reduce the Scope 1 emissions of trade-exposed safeguard facilities.
Yeah.
And so most of safeguard facilities are trade-exposed, and so we do anticipate a good take-up of Round 2 of that program.
Okay, thanks for that. Can I do a quick topic change, just in relation to methane accounting for coal mines? Is that you also, Ms Johnson, or someone?
Ms Pentony.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I'm just interested in the changing basis for the accounting for coal mine methane emissions. I understand that it's changed from, rather than individual baselines, it's now changed to averaging across the entire industry. And my information is that that's led to windfall gains for some coal mines where the average was higher than their emissions. So they've just profited from that accounting change. And I'm particularly interested in the situation that has meant that Adani Bravos's Carmichael coal mine earned around $12 million for operating below the average baseline despite making no effort to actually reduce their methane emissions. So have Adani had a $12 million windfall based on an accounting change and no methane reduction?
Sorry, Senator, as it relates to the safeguard mechanism, that is me. As it relates more generally to methane accounting, that is Ms Pentony. So there's a lot in that. So if I start with the way that safeguard baselines are calculated, there's the industry average component of each baseline and also the site-specific value. And so we consulted, you might remember, on the way that those baselines would come together as we developed the reforms in 2023. And that was the outcome, that there would be a hybrid mix of those two elements. And so really the ratio between site-specific values and the industry average determines where the baseline was set, and they are production adjusted, so they go up and down each year as production changes. And so there are sectors, and coal mining is the key one, where there's a great variability in the emissions intensity across the sector. And so that's meant that because the site-specific values and the combination of industry average has meant that some facilities may start with their emissions below their baseline. But there'll be others, conversely, that have started with their emissions above their baseline. And that was something that was built into the reforms to balance those two things out as we moved across the years from that site-specific calculation of baselines to industry average. And so it's true to say there were some facilities that were issued safeguard mechanism credits. Alternatively, on the other hand, there were other coal mines that needed to surrender either safeguard mechanism credits or Australian carbon credit units to meet their obligations. And so those things sort of roughly equal out. And then, of course, the baselines decline at 4.9% each year going forward. And so that obligation will become tougher as the years go on.
Thank you. I understand all of that. So is it correct that Adani got a $12 million windfall?
So, Senator, I would have to take that on notice and unpick those figures.
Okay, please do. Thank you. And so can Adani or any other mine that's benefited from that situation cash in those credits over time rather than abating or capturing methane?
Any credits that were issued in the 23-24 year can be used either by that facility up to the year 2030 or sold to other facilities. But as I say, there were many facilities that needed to already purchase and surrender credits to meet their obligations in the last financial year.
Yes, so Adani's made a $12 million windfall and now they can cash in those credits.
Well, Senator, I've taken that figure on notice. I can't comment on that figure.
Okay, but they can now on-sell that.
They can on-sell credits, that's right.
Okay, wow. Great. Can I go to quickly gas strategy? Sorry if that's not you. Thanks to whoever that is coming to the table.
Senator, it depends what your question is. This may be best dealt with in outcome 1.2, depending on what the nature of the question is.
Okay, well, let's give it a crack.
Well, we're not sure who to bring up because you haven't asked a question.
That is a very good point. Okay, so the electricity and built environment sector plans released by government, and I'm only laughing because it's actually about two conflicting policies, so I don't mind which person answers it, but the electricity and built environment sector plans released talk about using less gas and electrifying existing gas appliances, but the future gas strategy doesn't talk about reducing demand and in fact talks about opening up new gas fields. And we've seen 12 new gas projects approved by this government. So I'm just wanting to know which is government policy. Is it the policy to use less gas and electrify appliances, or is it the policy to open up new gas fields and not reduce gas demand?
Thank you, Senator. With respect to this outcome, so under climate change and reducing emissions, the government's policy is to achieve its legislated emission reduction target of 43% by 2030, the new target of 62 to 70 by 2035 and net zero by 2050. And as we were discussing earlier, one of the key priorities as set out in the net zero plan is to improve energy performance and electrification and across the board to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, including from the use of gas. And the net zero plan sets out a range of actions that the government's taking to reduce both direct use of fossil fuels, coal and gas, and to support the switch to electrification.
Thank you. I know all of that bit. My question is, how does that square, because it's in complete opposition to the future gas strategy, which isn't about reducing demand?
Well, it's just not, Senator.
Well, that's my question.
Well, the answer to the question is, and we're very happy again on Thursday, I think Senator Chisholm will be there in the resources part of the DISA estimates. It is absolutely consistent.
How?
Well, if you give me a moment, I'll try and walk you through it. It is absolutely consistent with our objectives domestically and internationally. Our gas is absolutely fundamental to Australia achieving its objectives here. In terms of the electricity system, the officials can talk you through it, but gas and storage, batteries, hydro, household batteries been installed, 1,000 a day, absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, love batteries.
to us
You're talking
achieving
about
our
future gas
to us
and you opening
achieving
up new gas projects.
and
Not
gas.
so loving that
Sorry,
one.
Senator Waters,
gas
we're just going to
is-
have to
I'm just
listen
trying
to
to
this.
bring him to
No,
the
I
point.
understand that, but we have to.
The thing is, it's complicated. It takes a little bit of time. Gas is fundamental for electricity. Is not the only peaking capacity that the system will have, or grid management capacity. There is gas. There are industrial batteries, household batteries. There's demand management. All of that is open to, and officials can talk you through that in terms of the electricity system. Household gas, states and territories are working their way through these questions, but we want as much gas available for the third category of domestic gas use, which is industrial gas, which is absolutely fundamental to us achieving our emissions reduction targets for industry. I can tell you that that it is absolutely crucial to us making progress and meeting our commitments to our international partners, for whom gas is an absolutely fundamental transition fuel, is also part of it. If we're serious about meeting targets, not sloganeering about them, is absolutely fundamental to the world meeting its targets. We want households to take up solar and batteries, and they are. We want households to take up electric vehicles, and they are. Gas is, we want just the right amount of gas in the electricity system. Not too much, but certainly enough to make sure that it's making its contribution. It's very expensive, gas, in the electricity system. But those two sets of policy objectives are absolutely reconcilable, absolutely consistent, and absolutely fundamental to Australia meeting its objectives.
Okay, I don't agree.
So
It doesn't matter.
at this point, we're going to have to go to our break, which we will truncate to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to share the call back to the coalition. Thank you, Senator Waters. Thanks all. We're suspended for 10 minutes. session. Thank you, Broadcasting, and I pass the call to Senator Duniam.
Thank you, Chair, very much. I wonder if I'm able to ask about what role DQ had in being consulted or providing analysis or support to Treasury and its modelling on Australia's net zero transformation. Oh, excellent. Thank you. I'm pleased to be permitted. All right. So if I can understand the extent of the engagement between DQ and Treasury and what sort of inputs were provided by this department to Treasury to determine the marginal abatement incentive pricing contained in the modelling.
Thank you, Senator. Just in general terms, and my energy colleagues might have more to say as it relates to the energy sector analysis in the next session, but just in general terms, we worked with Treasury and we were kind of the coordination point for the net zero and sector plans, and so we were a member of their modelling committee throughout the course of the work. We provided analysis and insights drawing on our emissions inventory and emissions projections work, and we work closely with them on things like the land sector, where there's a substantial carbon accounting task, as well as the kind of competing land uses where our colleagues in agriculture and ABARES were particularly involved as well. And we supported Treasury to gather kind of economic and technology and other inputs, which then they synthesised into their modelling and as reported in their published report.
Yeah, okay. So are you familiar with this marginal abatement prices chart within their modelling? Is that something that you're familiar with at all?
I'm familiar with it, but depending upon your question, Senator, it might be best directed to Treasury.
Yeah. Oh, indeed, as the final producers and custodians of that. So I'm just trying to understand the inputs into how they arrived at the end result. And of course, we'll come to the chart we're talking about here, which is table C2, which is page 17 of the Treasury modelling, if you've got it there with you.
I don't have it, but I can draw
yeah, I'm sure it's available online.
Published online, and
yes.
so I can just
very transparently. So I guess I'm just trying to understand how we arrived at, and for the benefit of, as you're looking it up there, I mean, this table C.2, which says comparison of estimates of incentives over 5-year averages, has a range of scenarios: the baseline scenario, the disorderly transition scenario, the renewable exports upside scenario, and then the Infrastructure Australia well below 2 degrees Celsius scenario. And over the course of time, it charts out dollar figures per tonne of carbon dioxide. And I'm looking at the 2046 to 2050 column there, and I'm trying to understand what role DQ had in trying to establish the data that exists in that table C.2.
Can I just clarify, Senator, you're referring to the table in the technical appendix to the modelling report?
Correct.
Sorry, I was looking in the modelling report.
17, yeah, that's right.
Page 17?
Correct.
Thank you. I've just opened that document now. And so those are all outputs from the Treasury modelling rather than inputs from the department. As I said, the Treasury modelling drew upon and synthesised in the various models that they used inputs and advice from us as well as all of the other sector plan leads, but then essentially combining, they will be able to speak much more eloquently to the modelling exercise, but in combining the economic activity, our understanding of technology trends, our understanding of the global trends, and the emissions reduction trajectory, which in this case goes through the government's target of 43% by 2030, 65% target in 2035 as an illustrative of the 2035 ambition, and to net zero by 2050. The model essentially gathers up the emissions reduction opportunities that are most cost effective up to that emissions level every year. And that's the output from the modelling that you see in this table.
And just
but certainly any questions beyond that would really need to go to Treasury.
Yeah, that's fine, and I'll definitely call on my friends there. But in terms of the opportunities you outline, and then you mentioned that a cost associated with it, that is not the cost associated with the opportunities to take up in terms of abatement is something you provide advice on, is what you're telling me. That is something that is formulated as an output post the work that's done by Treasury following the inputs you provide, is that right?
Yeah, so the kind of inputs we and other departments provided were the outlook for things like technology availability and cost, drawing on various published sources as reflected in the Treasury report.
Yes.
And they also drew on across government expertise in terms of like market outlook, those sorts of things, including.
Yeah, and so just to finish off, you mentioned cost associated with some of those methodologies and approaches. I mean, how do you determine them? Are they just something that you do a bit of research on what's in the marketplace at any point in time, or?
So it really would depend on the specifics, and so if you've got particular sectors or activities that you're interested in, then I could point you to probably the best place to direct those questions.
Yeah, that's right. I'll go and talk to
But
Treasury.
just in general, I think Treasury would be your best source of information.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Senator McKim.
Thanks very much. I've just got a couple of quick questions in regards to the improved native forest management in multiple use public forests methodology that I understand is either with ERAC or back out of ERAC. I know ERAC are scheduled for later on tonight, but frankly I'm not convinced we're going to get to them, so I'm just going to bowl up a couple of questions to the department now. Has that come, this is the further development that was prioritised by government, and I just wondered whether the department whether that's emerged out of the ERAC process.
Senator, thanks for the question. Matt Searson, branch head of the Emissions Reduction Assurance Committee Secretariat.
Thanks, Mr. Searson.
So yes, as you've identified, the New South Wales Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water were prioritised to develop a method for improved native forest management last year, and they're off and away developing that method. They've consulted on that, publicly consulted on the development of that method, and it will be considered by the ERAC later this month.
Okay. Has ERAC's had it for a while, haven't they?
No.
No. When will it arrive at ERAC?
It'll arrive with the ERAC over the coming days.
Coming days?
Yeah.
And ERAC will consider it later this month?
That's right.
And then post that consideration will provide some advice to you, to the department?
Well, the ERAC will consider the method and will contemplate whether the ERAC should undertake public consultation on the method at this time or whether further work is needed.
All right. Is public consultation a given?
No, it's not.
So ERAC might decide to just recommend the method?
No. It must happen for the method to progress. There must be public consultation, but I'm saying that the ERAC might want to pause for the moment and ask the proponent to undertake further research.
Yep. So public consultation is a given?
Yes, it will ultimately happen, yes.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Mr. Searson. I don't think it'd be fair to ask you any other questions about that. Other than to say, based on previous experience, ERAC will consider that later this month.
Yeah.
You would expect something out of ERAC shortly after that consideration, would you?
Well, the ERAC will consider the method later this month. They'll make a decision as to whether further work is needed, and they'll advise the proponent of that outcome if that's the outcome.
And will they advise the department of that outcome as well?
Yes.
At the same time, presumably?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. I've got some questions on the Climate Change Authority advice. I'm aware of the fact that that's been the subject of some discussion. But perhaps I could just start at a very high level to characterise what the Climate Change Authority did do, which is that I understand the Minister has said that the only recommendation was the target, but the entirety of that report was advice to government, wasn't it? Is that a fair character? Ms Rowley, am I asking you these questions? Or perhaps I will ask you these questions. Is that a fair characterisation? The entirety of the report is advice to government?
I think that it's fair to say that the entirety of the advice is the CCA's analysis underpinning their recommendation on the target.
Yeah.
And as I said in our discussion earlier, as with all of the CCA's analysis and reports, we take it seriously and we consider it, and it rolls into the ongoing work of government and climate change policy development.
Yeah, thanks. No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's just that they've characterised it as advice. Mr Keane's covering note to the report says we are pleased to submit to you the Climate Change Authority's advice. So I do think it's fair to describe it as advice. And I note that in the advice, the authority steps through a number of things that it says are required in order to meet even the bottom of the target range. That's accurate, isn't it, Ms. Rowley?
They set out a range of observations with respect to the emissions reduction opportunities and what they think would be necessary, yes.
Yeah, what is required, to use their words.
Mm-hmm.
What is required.
You've got it right there in front of you.
And
yes.
I believe, I know I'm quoting it accurately. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm asking is because Mr Bowen has tried to spin his way out of this by characterising what the Climate Change Authority advised the government in a completely different way. And I'll put to you, and I'm Minister, I'm happy if you want to respond to this, or Ms Rowley, I don't really mind. But what Mr Bowen has said is that what the Climate Change Authority did in their report to him, I'll quote him, what they did in their report to me quite rightly is ran through some of the possibilities as to what achieving that, the target, might look like. They are simply CCA commentary on the sorts of things that might happen should we meet the target. Now, that's just a load of spin, isn't it, Minister?
No.
Well, that's not what that is emphatically not what the authority said.
Well,
they said it's required.
The authority has set out, and they'll be here very soon.
Well, I'm not convinced we're going to get to them either, so I'm putting
Mr Keane's itching to answer your questions, and whichever other questions are directed to him.
I will put it to him. I'm putting it to you.
And the way that Minister Bowen has characterised that is absolutely correct. The Climate Change Authority has set out a pathway to achieve the target that the Independent Climate Change Authority recommended a target to the government, which the government has adopted. In addition to that advice, the Climate Change Authority has set out a pathway to achieve those objectives. Now, inherent in that proposition, in a complex market-based economy, not North Korea, complex market-based economy, is that if one outcome, one of those vectors doesn't work the way that you want it to, you've got to do more in the other.
That's right.
And
that's exactly right.
That's what the minister's referring to, and
no, it's not.
And your sloganeering about it doesn't alter that.
Well, you've said it's a pathway, but that's not what Mr Bowen said. He said it's commentary.
Well, it is one of.
He said they are some of the possibilities.
I appreciate the exchange, but I will shortly have to move the call on. So, Senator McKim, if you have a last question.
Yeah, sure. Do you understand the ordinary English language meaning of the words that Minister Bowen used that I just quoted to you?
Well,
because I don't recall him saying pathway. What I do recall him saying, and I recall me quoting Minister, is that he described them as possibilities and commentary when, in fact, the authority said they are required in order to even meet 62%, the bottom of the target range.
I understand the ordinary English meaning of patronising. That's what you've spent the last few minutes doing. It is a series, what has been advised is a possible pathway.
No, it's not. It's what is required.
And that is the approach that the government is taking here. This is about technological, industrial, energy, land use pathways that will apply between 2030 and 2035.
You don't have a plan.
And the implication in that
no idea how you're going to get
is that you know, the government will the government will move on those questions in a way that's consistent with the right economic outcomes, cognizant of the fact that less progress in one area means you need to make more in another. That's the truth of it. That's what meeting targets involves, rather than sloganeering about targets.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator McKim. I will now, before I pass the call on back to the Coalition, I can now release the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, thank their staff for their attendance, and though I'm loath to do this publicly, I will once again encourage my colleagues to think about other agencies that at this point of the evening we may release, given that we are finishing at 11, and I have a number of senators on this list, and so it seems unlikely that we will get to all the remaining agencies this evening. Senator Smith.
Chair. The government has said that there will be a direct input of $75 billion as being the total investment amount into renewable energy over the forward estimates. That's correct, Senator Ayres, Mr Kaiser?
I think
officials?
This question was asked a little bit earlier.
In my absence, I think, yeah. Apologies.
And there's a series of coalition questions which sort of overlap with each other. I think Ms Munro dealt with this.
I answered a question in relation to program 1.1 and a figure of, I think it was $70 billion. So I'm not sure the source that you have for this $75 billion in this time you said renewables?
I thought it was... I don't want to get them into trouble. I thought I read it in an Australian Financial Review article, but I'm happy to stand corrected on that. But for the sake of this exercise, we'll say it's 70, and if it's not $70 billion, then Ms Munro, you can correct it in the normal way. What does that $70 billion actually represent? Is that a envelope figure? Or is it the cumulative number of various initiatives that have already been agreed, not necessarily announced, but agreed across government or in government?
So that $70 billion figure was from Budget Paper 1, Statement 3, and it was a figure from since 2022 that the government had committed over $70 billion to action on climate change. And so that is a range of measures across not just even this portfolio, but across all of the government spending.
So that's a $70 billion figure that is been announced before in the budget paper number 1.
Yeah, statement 3.
So it's not new funding commitments?
No, but it is commitments since 2022. Yeah.
Okay. Senator Ayres, do you have anything else to add?
No, the officials have characterised that accurately.
Accurately. So, on notice, can you provide me with the details of what that $70 billion, the components of that $70 billion, or is it actually listed there in budget paper number 1 in the table that you've said? Sorry?
It doesn't all relate to this portfolio.
So of course, yep.
You may need to consult the budget papers or ask your Treasury colleagues.
Insofar as it is in your department, what is the proportion of that $70 billion in your department? Mr Kaiser, if you could provide that on notice. Thank you.
We can take that question on notice, yep.
Bear in mind that's a 2022 figure out. You know, it's it's not.
And that, I'm just trying to reconcile because it doesn't take into account some of the new measures that were announced as part of the net zero plan announcement, including, for example, the $1.1 billion for low carbon liquid fuels, the additional $2 billion for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. So yeah, there are a number of measures. So, but we will take that on notice and come back to you. Senator.
So in addition to that, if you could take on notice, what are those additional other measures that that have been announced? That would be helpful.
There's a sort of temporal question here. There are. I think there's we might just provide you with the budget papers that that set some of this out. And
no, I would like an answer that sets it all out. All out, not some of it out. All out. Yep.
I'm trying to be helpful, Senator Smith. There is additional funding that was announced in relation to the the recent announcement of the 2035 target. But
what was that? What was that quantum?
It's $8.3 billion in new measures announced to support the net zero plan. We'll try and come back to you on the 2022 to future figure, and we might try and express that in a way that sets it out over the forwards as well. Might be a bit more useful.
So I'm someone who's very comfortable in the granularity of things. So the more detail, that would be helpful. Could I just turn to the safeguard mechanism? And I appreciate that there's a review process underway or about to be underway, but I just wanted to get some clarity in regards to that. Has the specific scope and objective of the 2026-27 review of the safeguard mechanism been agreed?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. So as part of the reforms in 2023, the government published, as part of the subordinate legislation, an attachment that described the matters that would be considered in that 26-27 review. And so that includes things like the trade-exposed baseline adjustment status, the particular baseline decline rate from 2030 to 2035, and a range of other matters.
Okay, thank you. If you could just table that, just saves me chasing it. Has a decision been made on who will conduct the review?
Senator, the department will undertake the review. In that published document, the government particularly notes it will ask the Climate Change Authority to provide advice on one particular aspect of the review, which is the use of on-site emissions reduction technologies in the context of the use of Australian carbon credit units. So that's one piece of advice that the government will ask the CCA to provide as part of that review.
Yes. And the decline rate is subject to that review process?
That's right. So the decline rate's been set to 2030, and that's 4.9%. The government also included in legislation an indicative decline rate to 2050, but the specific decline rate for the period 2030 to 2035 will be determined as part of that review.
Right. Is it expected that the proportionate approach will be maintained?
So that's a decision that hasn't yet been made, Senator.
Thank you. Have you provided advice to government on that matter yet?
No, Senator. Because the review is still another financial year away, we're still in those early days of planning.
So you're not in a position to rule out an increase in the decline rate? It's really for Senator Ayres. Or Mr Kaiser, you're not in a position to rule out an increase in the decline rate, Senator Ayres? in regards to the operation of the safeguard mechanism?
If I was completely honest with you, Senator Smith, I would be in a position to respond to your question if I'd been listening to it. So if you take me to it again, I'd be delighted to try.
That's okay.
Sorry, I was diverted.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I do want to come back to a line of questioning that Senator Duniam had pursued, if time allows. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Smith. I'm coming to Senator Hodgins-May or Senator McKim.
I'll just finish on my line of questioning.
Okay, Senator McKim.
Thanks. Minister, you've quite rightly said that. I can't remember because you're being a tad patronising when you mentioned it, but you quite rightly have said that if you don't do something to reduce emissions, then you have to do more in another area. Now, one of the 9 things that the Climate Change Authority said was required to meet even the bottom of the target range was to end old growth logging. Now, just setting aside for a minute the fact that actually we should end all native forest logging in this country, given the fact that Minister Watt has ruled out ending old growth logging, at least in my home state of Tasmania, and he did that on ABC radio post the release of the Climate Change Authority's advice, where are you going to pick up the shortfall?
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
Where are you going to pick up the shortfall?
Well,
you're not going to do one of the things that the authority has said. So, as you quite rightly pointed out a few minutes ago, you'll have to pick up the slack somewhere else. So, where are you going to pick up the slack? Because you're ignoring the Climate Change Authority's advice that ending old growth logging is required to meet even the bottom of the target range.
Well, you're right to say that that's not the government's policy.
No, I know. So, where are you going to pick up the shortfall?
This is a big national effort that involves effort across industry, across the energy sector, across land use, right across the economy. Something that, party of government can grapple with.
Yeah, but where are you going to pick up the shortfall, Minister?
Well, we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up across the economy.
Well, that's no kind of an answer at all.
We're going to work and put effort into it.
Where? How?
Not sloganeering, like effort. I'm sure the officials be happy to talk to you about the other areas in land use and forestry that make a difference here, but you're right to point out that that is not the government's policy.
No, shamefully it's not the government's policy. The government's policy should be to end all native forest logging in Australia. But perhaps I could approach it this way with the department, so we can get a little bit more clarity than the minister was able to provide. What is the shortfall? Well, the minister's just been clear that the government's not going to adopt something that the authority said is required to meet even 62%. So what is the shortfall that needs to be made up by not adopting the policy of ending old growth logging in Australia? What's the abatement shortfall there?
So, to answer that, is on the basis that it would be policy, so therefore there's a shortfall. As it has been explained, it's not the government's policy. There are a number of pathways to achieve it. There's a different question in terms of what's the emissions associated with native...
That's what I'm asking you, yeah.
And I'm not sure we have those figures, but I'll just...
No.
So just a couple of things I'd note, Senator, briefly. CCA didn't present a quantitative breakdown of those measures, and we haven't done an estimate of what any of that might imply, and so we don't have a number for what that would deliver.
Is that something that you're working on? So the situation we're in is the authority has said there are a number of things that, in its view, are required. That's their word. Required to meet even 62%. So we're not even talking about a level of ambition higher than 62. That's the flat bottom of the target range. The authority said they're required. Minister Ayres has just confirmed that the government is not going to do one of those things that are required. Is the department working on quantifying the abatement that would be delivered if that thing were done, old growth logging were ended, and therefore what the shortfall is that is going to need to be picked up somewhere else, vaguely across the total economy, according to Senator Ayres. Like, what is the quantum? Is the department working on that?
So, Senator, we provide advice to the government on matters of policy interest to the government. In the development of the net zero plan, as we've been discussing, there's been extensive quantitative analysis of the emissions reduction opportunities across the economy by Treasury, and we've spoken to that, and further questions can go there. And we are always doing analysis and ultimately published in our annual emissions projections of what the government's policies are estimated to deliver over time.
I understand that, Ms. Rowley, but this is not government. It is not government policy to end old growth logging. Is the department working on understanding what the emissions abatement would be if old growth logging were ended? And the reason I'm asking that is the authority has said it's required to meet the 62% target, the bottom of the target. The government's not going to do it. So isn't it reasonable that the Australian people are entitled to understand what abatement is being missed out on because the government is not going to do that, and therefore how much other heavy lifting across the rest of the economy needs to be done in order to make up that shortfall? That's why I'm asking the question.
So if you're asking if we're modelling scenarios which are not government policy, not at this time, no.
Okay. Is the government going to provide a detailed response to the Climate Change Authority's targets advice?
Senator, I think that the government's decision to set a target of 62 to 70%, which has been reflected in Australia's nationally determined contribution submitted under the Paris Agreement and then detailed in the net zero plan, is the government's response to the CCA's advice.
That is their response to the recommendation.
That's
from
right.
the CCA. I'm asking about the advice. We've just confirmed in my last tranche of questions that the advice is the entirety of the report that the CCA provided to government, the report that said it's required to end old growth logging in order to meet even the bottom range of the target. And I'm asking, yes, it most emphatically does, Minister.
I tell you what.
No. I'm not even. I'm halfway through a question here, Chair, and I'm not interested in being mansplained.
Senators,
by Minister.
Senators, we are getting to the end of an evening.
I'm not interested.
Everyone needs to just come to order.
Perhaps I could get.
We are going to move the call on, Senator McKim. We have.
Halfway through a question.
I understand that, Minister. I'm about to move the call on, unless you have something that absolutely must be said, and very briefly.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary line of questioning to say you don't like the target, but you think we should do everything that's in it to achieve it. You don't like the target, but you stand in the way. You stand in the way of wind farm developments that are absolutely crucial to achieving the target.
You don't like accountability. That's what I'm hearing. And you haven't got a plan.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator McKim.
You don't have wind towers.
You're incompetent.
Senator McKim and Minister, please come to order now. Minister and Senator McKim. Senator Mackenzie as well. Thank you. Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Munro, is it the government's intention to legislate the new 2035 target?
That is a matter for government.
Has the department issued drafting instructions in relation to a legislated target?
We have not.
Minister, can you answer that question? Is it your intention to legislate the 2035 target?
Well, our approach to legislation is a matter for government.
And that's why I'm asking.
Over time, we legislated the last target. From memory, you lot voted against it. It's interesting to be fascinated with a target that you're determined to vote against for a concept that you don't believe in and don't support on the basis of a sort of climate denialism that's captured your
Minister,
whole
I'd ask you not to verbal anyone. You're really Minister, you're really inappropriate.
It's a pretty silly line of questioning.
Could I ask you to address the question? Is the government going to legislate a 2035 target?
I refer you to my previous answer in its entirety, Senator Henderson.
So, Minister, you've declined to answer the question.
I just answered it. I said it's a matter for government.
Yes, that's why I'm asking.
And
you. Aren't you a member of the government?
And that's how it remains.
Right. So, can I assume you haven't made a decision, or you're not a decision? Is that what your position is?
As I indicated, it's a matter for government.
And has anyone, you or anyone in your office issued drafting instructions in relation to any legislation?
Well, I'm the representing minister, of course. So
yes, I understand that.
Nothing's been going on in my office in relation to this.
No, I mean in the minister's office.
You heard what the official said. That's consistent with my understanding.
In the minister's office, has there been any drafting instructions at all in relation to a 2035 target?
I have no knowledge of that.
All right, could you take that on notice,
Certainly.
please? The Climate Change Authority's advice...
if you want another opportunity to vote against climate action, we'll consider,
Minister,
consider applying it.
Minister, we've just got limited time.
Yeah.
You are right. We think the 2035 targets are economically responsible. They are unachievable. They're economically reckless. So we've made our position very clear. But let me move on to my question. My next question.
Is it though?
The Climate Change Authority's advice is that to meet 62 to 70% by 2035 requires annual reductions of 19 to 24 million tonnes carbon dioxide equivalent, more than double the historic pace. How will that required reduction per year be achieved? Ms Munro, do you have those details?
So as it is set out in the government's very detailed net zero plans and the sector plans...
Can you just speak up a bit, sorry?
Sorry. There are a number of policies which are outlined in the net zero plan and also the sector plans, but probably the most significant part to how the government's sort of policy framework is set is that there's an annual review by the Climate Change Authority. The government will respond to that, and it really is on the basis of reviewing and refining its policies over time. Some policies are very clear in terms of the reviews that will come into play, including the safeguard mechanism and also the new vehicle emission standards, but there are a range of policies that the government will pursue over time.
Does the 2035 target of 62 to 70% below 2005 levels assume that the government's 43% target by 2030 is fully achieved?
It is on the basis that it would build on the hitting the 43% target, yes.
And what contingency planning has taken place by the Department of Australia falls short of the 43% emissions target?
So it's sort of, again, it's just sort of go back to what this government has put in place, which is now policies covered by legislation for 50% of the economy. So that never used to exist before. It now does. And then there's an annual basis that the government will consider its policies and means to improve outcomes over time.
If I could...
But I'm just asking... Sorry, just... policies aren't achievements, are they? So I'm just asking, has the department done any modelling if you don't hit the 43% target by 2030?
Senator, the analysis that the department does is for the annual emissions projections, which we referred to earlier, and that's on the basis of the government's implemented policies and measures. And as we were discussing earlier, the 2024 projections estimated that our emissions would be in the baseline scenario at 42.6% below 2005 levels in 2030, and on a budget basis, because the 2030 target is also an aggregate constraint on the emissions between 2021 and 2030. In the baseline scenario, we estimate that will be overachieved by 3 percentage points. Mm-hmm. And so that's the core analysis that the department does with respect to the achievement and the outlook to the 2030 target. And as we discussed, we revise that every year and we'll publish the next emissions projections by the end of this year. In addition, there was extensive quantitative analysis, as we've been referring to, led by the Treasury to inform the 2035 target and the net zero plan. and that sits alongside the Climate Change Authority's analysis, which drew on many different evidence sources, including modelling by the CSIRO. So there's a range of different analysis looking at Australia's emissions reduction opportunities and outlook that has informed both our current sense of how things are tracking and the 2035 target.
I'm going to be very sorry.
Well, real data, right? One thing to implement policies, NVES, which relies on certain assumptions of electric vehicle uptake year on year. How are you assessing the real data coming in? Who are you talking to that actually says how many electric vehicles are sold in any given years? Because the CCA data and analysis says that there needs to be in excess of 6 million new electric vehicles purchased by 2035 to achieve the target set, or the 50%. So the industry itself says that's impossible, and it's not because they don't want to sell cars. They love to sell cars and they don't care which type of car it is, as long as it gets off the lot.
So what Senator McKenzie is saying, the assumptions which underpin the 2035 target are just unrealistic. So what do you say to that?
So I would say that the CCA did extensive public consultation and analysis to inform their advice. That's documented both in their sector pathways advice to government last year and in the targets advice that we've been discussing in relation to the 2035 target, and they can speak if they have the opportunity to appear to the details of their consultations.
We'll address that in a minute. I've just got one quick question. How much will it cost to deliver the 2035 target? Has the department undertaken any economic modelling? And what do you say to the Business Council of Australia, which says it will cost as much as $520 billion and come at an export loss of up to $150 billion a year? Ms Munro?
So, yeah, if I can begin, and Ms Rowley will provide some supplementary information. But I do think it's important when you ask about what that cost is. For example, the CSIRO modelling for the CCA showed that the economy will continue to grow at the same rate, even as we reduce emissions to meet the 2035 target. So it is important to sort of understand what the costs are and how that is actually offset by the increased resilience of our exports and the trends to global demand. And then I think that the other benefit, which is a really important sort of finding of the Treasury modelling, really looked at that the failing to set a 2035 target would lead to a disorderly transition. And so that indicates that costs would actually increase by creating uncertainty and holding back investment. So a critical part, which does relate to the BCA figures, is about, so there's a difference between cost and investment. So investment from public-private sources, and it's also in light of what the counterfactual would be. So there are a range of figures, CSIRO, modelling, Treasury, and we did not undertake independent modelling.
So you're also, Senator, mischaracterising the BCA's position. Mr Black said the target range that's been set is ambitious, and our analysis shows that there is a pathway to achieving it that will require significant capital investment, major reform and exceptional collaboration between the public and private sectors. The Australian Industry Group said we should not spend the next 10 years arguing about this target range. We should get on with sensible measures that make it ever more achievable. As Ms Rowley and Ms Munro have said, this is not that figure that you have used is not just about what the public sector invests here. It is about what the private sector invests here, and private sector investment happens when policy settings are certain. Take an industry like the gas industry, for example. $392 billion
Minister, if I could just
almost
go on to... I've got
exclusively
very limited time.
private sector investment
So-
because the policy settings were there.
So Minister, if I could just go to my next question.
Don't mischaracterise what organisations are putting.
Can I just want to, just on notice, on that, I'm sorry, just on, I just want to ask on notice, you referred to the CSIRO modelling. Could we please have a copy of that modelling on notice and any other work the department has done in relation to the costs of the 2035 target?
I don't think that the CSIRO is really a matter for DISA.
For CCA, sorry, it was Advice Commission by CCA.
So if I could just have, if I could have that modelling on notice, please.
Yeah, and so that's modelling commissioned by the Climate Change Authority, and I understand it's published alongside their advice on their website. Just coming back to the economic costing of the targets
Ms.
for
Rowley,
2025.
I'm just still asking for a copy of the modelling.
Very happy to
Thank you
provide
very
that.
much.
And so just with respect to the question with respect to the economic costs of the target, Treasury's modelling examined the economic outlook in Australia with a target in the 62 to 70% range, compared to a scenario where we don't have a 2035 target. They found that having no target would increase policy uncertainty, leading to a disorderly transition with lower economic growth, missed employment opportunities and higher wholesale energy prices.
Yeah. Ms. Rowley,
they estimate, if I could just finish my answer.
The Minister's just advised.
If I could provide the details of the...
So, hold on. Let's come... just one second, please, Minister. Sorry, Senator Henderson. We'll just come to order. Ms Rowley, can you please finish your answer as briefly as possible, and then I'm moving the call on.
Thank you. And so Treasury estimated that a disorderly transition would lead to $500 billion less cumulative investment to 2050 than an orderly transition. So that's having a target versus not having a target. If I could just finish. And for cumulative real GDP, the estimate is 1.2 trillion lower in the disorderly transition scenario than in their baseline to 2050.
Sorry, just to confirm, on notice. Just on notice.
No, Senator Henderson, we'll come back to you. I'm going to move the call on now. This was in relation to the earlier question on notice. Senator Waters.
Quick one, then I'll hand over to my colleague. Further to the $5 billion that we discussed earlier in relation to earmarking 5 of NRF for the new fund, there was an announcement made on the same day for $2 billion for CEFC. Is that a similar earmarking, or is that a fresh allocation?
That was additional resourcing.
Sorry, could you speak up? I need to.
Sorry, get closer. Sorry, that was additional resourcing to the CFC.
Okay, and the media release says that that's to continue to drive downwards pressure on electricity prices, but it doesn't actually have anything more than that. What is there a specific purpose that CEFC will be tasked with using that $2 billion for?
Thank you for the question. Tom O'Connor, Acting Branch Head of the Decarbonisation Initiatives Branch. So it's an additional $2 billion into the CFC general account. I believe the Net Zero Plan talks about words to what you just said then, but also referred to an update of the investment mandate. And so that is, I guess, the package of directions that government provides to CFC that tells it what to do. And so within that, we would expect that to be updated, and that would include reference to driving down electricity prices.
Okay, and what's the time frame for that investment mandate update? And that's just a ministerial. Is that a disallowable instrument? Does that come to
It's non-disallowable.
Yeah.
It is ministerial, but both the Minister for Climate and Energy, but also the Finance Minister.
Yeah, and when will they update the mandate by, please?
That will be a matter for government, but
okay.
Yep.
And so it will simply be updated to reflect those words in the media release to drive down electricity prices. No further direction as such.
It will be a matter for government, but they can make all sorts of changes.
It'll be more solar, more wind, no doubt, be opposed by Senator McKim and the National Party. It'll be more electricity generation, low-cost electricity generation to drive costs down and reduce emissions. It's not helped by Green senators getting in the way of it.
That's already in the investment mandate. Thanks for the hyperbole, Minister, but I'm just trying to get to the changes to the investment mandate. But I think you've answered me that. So I might hand over to my colleague.
Right, thanks.
Chair. Thank you.
So just to tie off on my previous line of questioning, and I guess this is more appropriately directed at you, Minister, is it the case that the only response that the government is going to make to the Climate Change Authority's advice on 2035 targets is to accept the recommendation for the target band? Is the government going to provide no other response to the Climate Change Authority's advice other than to accept the recommendation for the target band?
Well, Senator, you know that's not the case.
No, well,
on the day that the target recommended by the Climate Change Authority, opposed by you, but recommended by the Climate Change Authority, accepted fully by the government, we announced an additional $8.3 billion in new measures on that day to support that. Senator Waters has just referred to some of them. That is significant effort effort in the industrial sector. $5 billion in addition to what's going on in the high emission safeguard areas. Additional recapitalising the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, the net zero plans,
I'm aware of
6 sector plans. Like there's
more than half of that was not new money.
You asked if there's anything additional. The answer is yes.
All right, thank you. Is there anything further that the government is working on as a direct response to the Climate Change Authority's advice?
Well, what was announced is an awful lot for government to be getting on with. You wouldn't rule out over time new initiatives. You know, you look at measures like the home batteries announcement, 77,000 new home batteries, more than 1,000 a day. Like that program is going very well. You wouldn't, you know, that's a good development. No doubt you'd find a way to vote against that too. Over time...
You're just going to keep making stuff up, Minister. You're a Minister of the Crown and you're going to sit here making up rubbish.
New
batteries.
Sit here making up rubbish. 77,000 new batteries. That is a very substantial contribution to that effort. $5 billion
to the question I'm
for the National Reconstruction Fund. That is a lot of work to be getting on with. And of course, government over the period between 2025 and 2035 will be advancing more. That's what people get when they elect a Labor government, is action on climate change and real progress.
I think they elected to approve new coal and gas projects hand over fist.
Wind farms.
Like you are.
Wind farms on Robben Island,
our forests,
opposed by you.
Wind
farms on Robben Island, opposed by you.
Supporting a mendicant forest industry with public money.
Senator McKim. This is not productive of a question and answer. I appreciate that you and Senator Ayres have a very good relationship in this respect, but it is important that we stick to what estimates is here to do. So questions and answers, please.
So for the last question on this particular matter, Minister. So is it the case that given the fact that you've ruled out ending native forest logging, you are completely unable to explain where the shortfall is going to be picked up, the abatement shortfall is going to be picked up, other than some vague assurance that it'll happen somewhere across the economy?
Is that it? Is
that the best you can do?
This is a 10-year target. This is a 10-year target.
That's right.
That is going to require effort every single year. Yeah. In real things, not slogans.
That's right.
Real things.
Like ending old growth logging.
Like wind farms on Robbins Island.
Like ending old growth logging.
That make a meaningful contribution. You can't make progress on climate change by opposing wind farms.
You can't make progress on climate change by logging native forests.
It's not possible to do it without big-scale wind farms.
This is really not a response to the question I asked.
You should take some responsibility for that position.
You should actually do your job as a government and explain where you are going to pick up the abatement shortfall that you have just a few minutes ago admitted exists, and you are unable to explain to the Australian people, all this committee, where you are going to find that abatement shortfall, other than waving your arms about and saying we'll find it somewhere. That's not good enough, Minister. The planet's burning, mate.
Yeah, well, that's why you shouldn't get in the way of wind farm developments like the Robbins Island one. It's irresponsible.
Sorry, Senator McKim.
I'm going to leave the Minister there. He's incapable of responding to the question.
If you would ask one more question, and then I'm going to move.
I want to ask the department, in the Climate Change Authority advice, alongside saying it was a requirement to end old growth logging, they talked about halving re-clearing rates. Does the government have a working definition for re-clearing? And you can take that notice if you like.
No, I can speak to it as it relates to the Australia's emissions. There's a whole range of different land use activities which we use as the basis for our estimates of emissions and sequestration in the land sector. And my colleague Ms Pentony might be able to drill into some detail, but so re-clearing is where land has been, like lots of different categories, but it's where it's been previously cleared and then regrown and then like the word indicates, then re-cleared.
So just to be clear, it could be regrowth forest, where old growth forest has previously been cleared and then regrown. Would that qualify as re-clearing? And also, specifically, agricultural land that has previously been cleared and then the stock's been removed from it and
it's particularly
regrown.
more relevant to that category.
So can I ask regrowth logging, regrowth forest, because that does fit the definition you've just given us, Ms Rowley, of a piece of land that's been cleared. So I'm sure you're aware the native forest logging industry clear fells, then it burns, so there's basically nothing left apart from a bed of ash. Then they either re-sow or the forest regrows. Is that included in re-clearing?
So, Senator, those emissions from forestry activity is all included in the remaining forest category of the inventory, and so it incorporates both the clearing activity in those forests and the regrowth of those forests.
So, and that would be just to be
and that
clear.
probably wouldn't be counted in the.
Could I ask you to take on notice?
We'll take it on notice. And so, if we could just get the.
So if you could just take on notice whether regrowth forests that has regrown or been re-sowed after clearing for logging, whether that counts under your definition of re-clearing.
It does not.
Okay,
it does not. We don't need to take it on notice.
All right, thank you.
Senator McKim, I really need to move the call on.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Senator Smith.
Thank you very, very much. At page 17 of the Treasury modelling is table C.2, which is called the comparison of estimates of incentives. Are you familiar with that, Ms Rowley?
We had a question on it earlier,
great.
Senator.
Just in layman's terms, could you explain to me what that table demonstrates?
Senator, I would refer detailed questions with respect to the technical appendix to the Treasury modelling to Treasury.
Right.
So I would suggest that you direct that question to Treasury if you want a unpacking of that table.
Because you're not familiar with the explanation, or you are familiar with the explanation?
I think at this time I would defer to my colleagues in Treasury who published this document for an explanation of its technical appendix tables.
There was a series of questions earlier, Senator,
I understand that.
No.
Just because other senators have asked questions doesn't excuse me.
I'm trying to explain that there was a good discussion about that, about their input that they can answer on behalf of.
Actually, I'm not so sure it was a good discussion because I'm still not clear. So just to be clear for Senator Smith, what inputs were provided by your department to Treasury to determine the marginal abatement incentive pricing?
Senator, as we discussed earlier in this session, on a question almost identical to yours, we, as the department, provided advice and analysis on the energy and electricity sector, which could be covered in outcome 1.2. We coordinated the development of the net zero and sector plans and worked with Treasury as part of that to help them gather input from across all of the sector plan leads. And that input included in relation to market outlooks, technology availability and costs, and market trends, which was input synthesised by Treasury into their modelling, and then things like Table C2 are an output from their modelling.
Senator, that was exactly the question that was asked earlier. If there could be some coordination between the right questions and the centre-right questions,
whether it's been asked before or
there's nobody asking questions for the moderates. If you lot could just organise amongst yourselves,
no.
then there could be just lines of questioning that are
Senator,
coordinated.
as you know, I'm a
and
very
you'll get there a lot
independent
more
spirit.
effectively.
I want to be satisfied for myself. Is it right to characterise the marginal abatement incentive as a price on carbon or a carbon tax? And if not, why is that inaccurate?
As I said, Senator, you might want to direct that question to our colleagues at Treasury.
Do you know the answer to that, Ms. Rowley?
So, as Ms. Rowley said,
it's not my word. It's not Treasury document.
it's not our report.
It's a Treasury document based on Treasury analysis. The question's best directed to Treasury.
It's a question about the marginal abatement incentive of which your department has provided some input to.
Yes, but not the output, which is the Treasury document. Questions about the outputs of Treasury modelling should be directed to Treasury.
And Senator, it's a modelling exercise. It's not a measure. It's a modelling exercise.
And that's why it's called modelling.
So ask the Treasury modellers. Ask the Treasury modellers.
Senator and a scholar. You really are a senator.
You won't get much more out of this tonight.
You really are.
Is my prediction.
That's right. So officials will not answer the question about whether or not the marginal abatement incentive could be characterised as a price on carbon or a carbon tax.
I'm answering it for you. It can't be. It's a modelling exercise.
Thank you very much, Senator Ayres. Can I ask briefly about the beef cattle herd management method, or is that for 1.2?
No, that's this session.
So just briefly, I understand that the beef cattle herd management method was due to expire on the 30th of September 2025 and sunset on the 1st of October 2025. Did this happen?
Yes, it did.
Is a sunsetting review of the beef cattle herd management method being conducted by the Emissions Reduction Assurance Committee?
Yes, Senator. The Emissions Reduction Assurance Committee has been undertaking a sunsetting review of the beef cattle herd management method.
And what stage is that review at the moment?
It's at its very final stages, Senator.
Is that, and the review, where does it go? Does it go to the Minister?
It was requested by the Assistant Minister and will go to the Assistant Minister.
And is the expectation that that would be published?
That's my understanding, yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to Senator Hodgins-May.
I've got some questions about Barossa and Darwin, LNG to begin with. On 22nd of September, Santos announced that the Barossa gas project was now commencing operations. Is the department aware of whether the empty leaking tank at Darwin LNG is now being filled up from this project?
Sure, we have the right officials to answer that particular question. The reporting of emissions associated with that would be to the Clean Energy Regulator. So we're not responsible for the operations of that tank.
Perhaps the Minister, are you aware of, or have you taken any actions to ensure that you're informed about the leaking tank?
I would have thought that, I mean, officials can jump in if I've got this wrong, but I would have thought that the kind of activity that you're referring to, take the point about the Clean Energy Regulator in terms of the measurement questions, but in terms of the management of that, beyond the sort of responsibility of the Northern Territory government, the resources part of the DISA estimates is where you'll get more joy on that question, I think.
Senator, it's the Northern Territory EPA that's the primary regulator for that facility.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Are you satisfied, though, with the Territory's, I suppose, ability to regulate the tank, which is a known health risk, despite letting it leak for over 20 years?
Senator, if you're asking a compliance question, that was much earlier today. Those officials have now left the building.
So you're not planning to seek advice on it, given that it was leaking for 20 years?
I'm explaining that the officers of the department that could have answered those questions have now left because we dealt with those matters hours ago.
Okay, thank you. Got some questions about CCS. The department wrote in a ministerial brief obtained by Freedom of Information by an FOI request that CCS will play a limited but critical role in achieving net zero by 2050. How has the government defined what limited means in the context of the deployment of CCS across the economy?
Yeah, thanks, Senator. So I think the brief that you referenced was approximately sort of 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So I guess I'd turn your attention to, as Ms Rowley previously noted, the net zero plan does identify scaling up net carbon removals as one of the 5 decarbonisation priorities. Really, our role in CCS is about making sure that the regulatory and the required frameworks are in place, and so the government has been working on that. There's also we have a program that has the $130 million Carbon Capture Technologies program, which was announced in the 22-23 October budget, and that's been supporting projects, including $65 million to the first round of that program, to look to support projects that work towards that. So I think, once again, there's no particular sort of target for CCS within the net zero planning document suite, but really it's about making sure that the regulatory settings are appropriate and providing funding to pilot and demonstration projects as they set up.
Thank you. So is it correct to say there's no formal criteria or strategy to guide CCS investment at the moment? Not regulation of the technology, but investment in it. Is there a criteria around that?
So the program that I just referenced aims to accelerate R&D and demonstration of emerging carbon capture and use technologies, including carbon dioxide removal. So in terms of that program, there are objectives as it relates to it, and then apart from that, it is one of the technologies within that net zero plan suite of documents.
And if I could just clarify, Senator, do you mean carbon capture and storage in the kind of, as it applies to industrial facilities, or do you mean those kind of newer and emerging carbon removal technologies?
Probably the latter, and investment in it. But I'll jump to
So in terms of the latter, the department's also funded CSIRO to work on a national carbon dioxide removal roadmap, and that will look at both the sort of it really looks at the novel forms of carbon dioxide removal as one of the suite of technologies that may be in play into the future to allow that full set of sort of suite of technologies for Australia's transition to net zero.
A 2021 study from the Imperial College London modelled that renewables directly compete with CCS as an electricity source, ultimately eroding the values of upstream fossil CCS by a significant amount. How will the government manage the risk that CCS projects are approved that further delay the transition to renewables and other net zero energy sources?
Well, there'll be other colleagues that will talk more about the transition to renewables. From the government's perspective, things like the safeguard mechanism are not technology agnostic, and so, for example, CCS will be one way that safeguard facilities can look to manage their on-site emissions or to work with other facilities nearby to manage their emissions. So I guess there's a suite of technologies that Australia will need to take up as we move to our net zero goal in 2050.
I think that's sort of why the officials were asked you to distinguish between the industrial role, that is in very hard to abate or impossible to abate industrial processes, the role of CCS there.
Yeah, I've got some questions about
and
that.
the role of CCS in the electricity system more broadly. I have to say, I mean, in my own portfolio area, there's much more focus on one, not the other.
I've got some questions about Bonaparte later, which might go into detail on that. But CCS is frequently modelled in decarbonisation pathways with a capture rate of 90%. Is this the assumed capture rate that the Australian government adopts when modelling CCS in climate projections? Do you know?
Senator, when we do the emissions projections, CCS is incorporated to the extent that it's been adopted by industrial facilities. In Australia at the moment there are 2 CCS plants operating associated with gas production facilities, and the capture rates are informed by both what they report to the Clean Energy Regulator as part of their annual greenhouse gas emissions reporting obligations, and the outlook for the operation of that plant and any future or intended investments.
And so how does the government factor in consistent underperformance of CCS facilities which have never achieved a real CO2 capture of greater than 83% according to the Institute of Energy Economics and Financial Analysis?
So as it relates to facilities in Australia, as I said, it's informed by their actual performance as reported under the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Scheme to the Clean Energy Regulator. As it relates to broader adoption in, like kind of more long-term decarbonisation scenario analysis like that conducted by Treasury to inform the net zero plan and like that conducted by CSIRO to inform the CCA's advice, there was, to my recollection, no adoption of CCS in electricity production, for example, modelled in those scenarios because it wasn't cost effective relative to the other options that we have for electricity generation. As it applies to other applications, whether that's hard to abate industrial sectors or in the LNG and other applications, the assumptions, detailed assumptions you'd probably best direct to Treasury, but the performance would be informed by the international literature, including both actual performance and the outlook over time.
It's just not a feature of the discussions around electricity generation. Like, it's not... There is an industrial question about facilities that produce ammonia, for example, and it is absolutely a challenge for those kind of facilities because there's no other, they require gas to make it's a chemical process, not a heat or energy process. So there is work that those facilities are engaged in that area because it is very hard to abate. But in the electricity system, I just haven't heard people seriously discussing CCS in the electricity system for a very long time.
Senator Hodgins, I'll have to move the call along. I can come back to you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to move very quickly to COP31. What's the status of discussions regarding Australia potentially co-hosting COP31? Mr Kaiser, do you have that information? And what proposals are being put to Turkey with the latest idea that both countries co-host COP31?
So there have been ongoing discussions with Turkey in relation to possible arrangements for the hosting of COP31, but I'll defer to my deputy for the detail.
Thank you, Secretary. So the current status is that there has not been any agreement reached with Turkey.
There has not been any, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, there's no agreement reached. So you asked about the status, I understand?
Right, yes. And what has Australia offered Turkey? Anything at all?
No, we have not made any offer to Turkey.
No inducement or...?
No, no inducements.
And no deal on the table in any respect?
There's no deal on the table. We have had ongoing discussions about what Turkey's interests are what our interests are in hosting COP31 with the Pacific.
Well, so when the UK negotiated with Turkey previously, there was a package of investment pledges made by the UK, and there's been other concessions made with other countries, including a prisoner exchange by another country, or two other countries. So has anything been put on the table in any way whatsoever by Australia in relation to co-hosting or hosting COP31?
Not of that nature.
Of any nature?
What we have been discussing is what their interests are. So, for example, one of the interests that we know Turkey has is on zero waste. And so we have had discussions around, for example, is that an area, like a COP has many elements, including an action agenda. Is that, for example, an area that Turkey may want to lead on? Again, there is no agreement reached. There are no inducements of the sorts that you have outlined that have been offered by Australia.
So is the nature of those discussions for Australia to accept Turkey's waste? I mean, what do you mean when you talk about...
It's about an agenda item.
The agenda being, we call it circular economy, zero waste.
Okay, right, so it's on the agenda.
Yeah,
Can you provide on notice all correspondence and briefing notes and advices in relation to the negotiations and discussions with Turkey?
We'll take that question on notice, Senator. Of course,
I've asked for it to be on notice.
Yes, but I just want to explain publicly outlining the negotiation position with another country is probably not in the national interest. So we'll take it on notice, but understand that we're being respectful of the discussion in the way that Ms Munro has outlined it.
Do you have any idea about the cost involved of hosting or co-hosting COP31? Has there been any work done by the department?
Yeah, so the cost of hosting COP31 will depend on a number of factors, and that goes to the scale of the sort of COP that Australia would host. Also, the cost recovery measures, the partnership that we enter into with South Australia. So there are a number of factors which would determine the cost of hosting COP31. And so, again, they will be advice provided to government when we're in a position to do so.
So what are the preliminary cost estimates for Australia to host COP31? So I'm talking logistics, security, staffing, infrastructure upgrades.
So you're asking for...
What are the preliminary cost estimates?
I don't have those preliminary cost estimates.
Do you know what they are?
So there's been work undertaken, and as I said, it will depend on a number of factors.
Yes, I understand
and that will be advice provided to the government.
No, but the fact
and if
that
they
it's
make
advice...
a decision on hosting or whether we host a COP and what those decisions are, that will be reported through the budget processes.
It's a big conference, not Commonwealth Games, Senator.
So the fact that it's advice to government doesn't mean that you shouldn't answer the question. Can I ask you what the preliminary cost estimates are, if you can give the committee a range?
No, I don't have those figures,
Okay,
Senator.
do you know what they are?
There are a number of factors, as I have said, in terms of what ultimately would be
but I'm asking for the
cost of
cost
hosting
estimate,
it.
though.
For example, Senator, it would depend on what cost-sharing arrangement we arrive at with the South Australian government, which is why my colleague can't answer that specific question.
Can you give me a range,
For example.
Mr Kaiser?
No,
I
they've done the best that they can.
No, right. Just very quickly, Minister, can you detail what the total carbon emissions were generating by sending 75 people from 7 different departments and agencies, plus 2 ministers and staff at a cost of $1.6 million to the UN Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan?
Well, I'll see if officials can provide information about that. But it is absolutely in Australia's interest for Australia to be represented effectively at global climate negotiations that set the terms with which Australian industry participates. 97% of our trading partners have their own net zero objectives, where the agreements that Australia reaches have a profound implication for our agriculture sector, for our relationships in our region, particularly in the Pacific.
Minister,
and in
sorry to
Southeast
interrupt.
Asia.
We're nearly at 11.
It is in Australia's national interest.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just asking about the carbon emissions.
To be effectively represented. If there's information available about carbon emissions, we'll do our best. At COP26 in Glasgow, Scott Morrison took a delegation of 75 people with 13 political staffers. 13 political staffers and 75 officials
Minister,
chasing Scott Morrison around Glasgow. So we'll take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Sorry, Senator Smith. I'm going to go. Thank you, Minister. Senator Hodgins-May.
Thank you, Chair. The Attorney General's Department confirmed in estimates earlier today that it has given advice to the Department regarding the implications of the ICJ's advisory opinion on states' obligations on climate change. Without going into the detail of the advice, does it address Australia's potential liability to other states for failing to take adequate climate action and ways to minimise liability risks?
Hi, Sally Box, Head of Division International Climate Negotiations Division. You are correct that the Office of International Law has provided advice to the Department on the opinion, but it's not appropriate for me to comment on the content of that advice.
What action has the Department taken in response to the advice? Can you comment on
the Australian Government, the Department of Climate Change, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Attorney General's Department are all still considering the ICJ advisory opinion. It's a complex opinion, and the government is still carefully considering that opinion.
Yeah, incredible opinion. Did the department provide any advice to the Climate Minister about potential liability when finalising the 2035 targets, net zero plan, or the sector plans?
So, if I can answer, in the CCA's advice to government, it makes clear that the ICJ opinion was delivered while the authority's 2035 targets advice was under development, and it is a significant development, and its implications will take some time to analyse. But I think what's important is that the advisory opinion itself speaks to a range of factors which are relevant to the Paris Agreement, including that NDCs need to represent the highest possible ambition, be informed by the best available science, and be capable of contributing to the Paris Agreement temperature goals. And these were absolutely factors that were part of the considerations by the CCA in developing its advice, and also by the department in developing the net zero plan, and ultimately that advice that went to the government.
Thank you. Was the risk of a legal challenge from our Pacific neighbours for failing to do enough to keep emissions below 2 degrees factored into those decisions?
I wouldn't put it in those terms, Senator.
What terms would you put it in?
I'd put it in terms of meeting our Paris Agreement obligations, and again referring to the advisory opinion, seeking that parties actually meet their Paris Agreement obligations. So that's the basis, in terms of what we have under the Climate Change Act, our international treaty obligations, and also considering the advisory opinion.
Has the Environment Minister sought any advice from the Climate Change Policy or Climate and Energy Legal Council regarding the implications of the ICJAO on the design of the EPBC Act, and in particular how climate impacts should be considered under the proposed reforms?
It was an earlier outcome, Senator.
Pardon?
We addressed this outcome much earlier. EPBC reform was on, I think it was mid-afternoon.
And in response to the ICJ?
With the Environment Minister, yes. Yeah.
And this was asked?
When he was at the table, yeah.
Okay, my apologies. Yep. I have got a few more questions, but do I have time for... Yeah?
Yes.
Yep, great, thank you. Thank you. On what basis do you classify the Bonaparte CCS project as a major renewable energy project? And you maybe need to switch over again, sorry about that.
So can you just state that question again?
On what basis do you classify the Bonaparte CCS project as a major renewable energy project? If you do.
Decision of another minister. This is it. Senator, that's actually a decision of the Minister in his ministerial capacity as the Minister responsible for the Minister for Industry.
Yeah, that's really something we can come to on Friday.
We can come to what, sorry?
On Friday in Department of Industry and Science and Resources.
Okay, and storing CO2 from hard-to-abate industry. Yeah, okay, so
yeah,
I'll be able to get into all of that?
It's all there. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, I have no further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hodgins, mate. Senator Henderson, did you want a couple of minutes? I will have a couple of minutes. I appreciate that you may not.
Well, can I say I really am sorry that we haven't got to the other witnesses this evening. It's been not
as sorry as they are.
A very yes, I probably agree with you on that, Minister. Look, I just probably just wanted to go back to the carbon abatement, the table that we talked about before, and Ms Munro, you're at the table. This looks and smells very much like a price on carbon, a carbon tax. I know you didn't produce the modelling, but would you agree with that characterisation?
Senator, I'm no Treasury official, but a tax usually results in revenue to the government. Yeah, a marginal cost of abatement does not.
So do you agree it is a carbon tax?
No, I'm saying that tax usually results in revenue to the government.
Yes.
It's a sort
marginal cost of abatement does not.
It's a sort of definitional question, but if it assists in the Treasury modelling, it does set this out. It says, this method of estimating the marginal abatement incentive is a standard feature of many climate modelling exercises and does not imply the adoption of a carbon pricing policy. It's absolutely standard modelling, but it's for Treasury to sort of work their way through those issues if you want to. As the Secretary says, it's a fundamental part of any sort of definitional question of a tax. It's a revenue-raising measure. This is a modelling exercise to understand how behaviour in the economy works, and you know, there's nothing like consistent policy to drive good policy outcomes.
So the modelling exercise, the Treasury marginal abatement price ranging from $293 to $328 per tonne by 2050 is a price on carbon, isn't it, Minister?
I just read the statement from Treasury which says it's not, and it's a standard modelling thing that happens. Models do this.
I agree, it's been modelled.
They sort of understand, they try and understand behaviour in the economy.
But it is
and that's what this one does.
It is an economy-wide marginal abatement incentive which by 2050 will reach up to $329 based on $24. Now, if you think about under the Gillard government, the carbon price was between $20 and $40. I think at one point it was $23. If we are talking about a Treasury marginal abatement price of between $293 and $328, that is an alarming increase.
It's a modelling.
Every single tonne of abatement.
It's a modelling construct, not a policy.
Yes, it is a modelling construct. But isn't this what this is, Minister? This is a shadow carbon price. It is assessing.
It's a little bit like Senator McGrath's bedroom tax. It's just make-believe nonsense, and you know it's nonsense.
It is assessing the costs that it would take.
And you shouldn't persist in disinformation.
To incentivise.
You shouldn't persist in disinformation.
Minister, I'm reading from this document, from your government's document.
You should not persist in disinformation.
So
I know that's fashionable in the Liberal Party
You're very sensitive about this,
disinformation,
Minister, because Treasury has factored all of this into their modelling outputs. They've assumed that every cost produced right across the economy will result in a price per tonne of carbon of between $293 a tonne and $328 a tonne. So this is a shadow carbon price. It is a price on carbon.
I suppose I should regard it as an improvement that some of you have moved from being vectors of other people's disinformation to making up your own disinformation.
Minister, I hate to disappoint you. I'm reading from your own documents.
It's a modelling construct in an academic, research-driven exercise.
So it's just academic. So
that
can we agree it's an academic carbon price?
It is not government policy. It is a modelling exercise, and it's dishonest to suggest otherwise.
Right, and so it's an academic exercise, a carbon cost of up to $328 a tonne. Thank you, Minister.
Sophistry is what it is.
Senator Henderson, I will take back the call now. Thank you. May I say we are now concluding this hearing. This involves the release of the departments and agencies that we have not got to today. You go with the committee's thanks for making yourself available and for the preparation undertaken, and I'm sure the regret of many that we did not get a chance to speak to you. That concludes today's hearing. Thank you to all witnesses who appeared and to Hansard and Broadcasting for their assistance. I remind senators that the committee has agreed that any written questions on notice should be lodged with the Secretariat by 16 October 2025. The committee stands adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you all.